Okay, we'll bring the meeting to order at 7:01. And we'll start with our board norms, which are to maintain our focus, communicate respectfully, be present, keep the board productive and effective, and respect the agenda. Moving on to changes to the agenda. I know we have a couple. If I don't get this right, let me know. I'll put this under old business as number 4, a solar bankruptcy update.
Yep.
Correct? Okay. And then we will also be adding an executive session for co-curricular contract. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Any other changes to the agenda?
Cool, thank you.
All right. Seeing none, moving on to.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes, sir.
I didn't know if you wanted to address the agenda to have the JAMBA folks earlier on the page, so you didn't have to wait around all night.
Oh, great idea.
Plus, they want to wait around all night. They look like they kind of want to wait.
I plan to be here. I don't know.
Karen's going to hang out here.
Yeah, how about this? We'll just put you right after public comment, and then if you do want to head out, you can.
Thank you.
Feel free to. Okay. Student report.
I'm Colin, and I just joined in.
You're not good, Colin.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Just talk about where you're from.
Yeah.
I'm from Jamaica, and small town. It's pretty nice though. A lot of kind people there. I like to play basketball. It's very fun for me. I get along with all my teammates. Very good skill building, getting to know everyone, and bike tech. Yeah, taking a bike tech course where you can get certified and work on bikes, and it can kind of develop a career you can go into and get you some good experience right off the start. It's teaching me a lot how to do resumes and how to write checks and kind of do like inventory and kind of be like a leader and a follower. Yeah, just a leader. And it's a really good class. I like it. It's hands-on. It helps me learn a lot. Helps with my OCD and going off on different things and stuff like that. It's a really good class. And then I'm doing children's literature, which is really fun. I'm building a picture book right now that I'm going to be reading to the little kids across the street one sometime. So.
That's where part's over.
Nice job. Nice job.
Well, it gets better.
Yeah.
You're fine.
You did a great job.
You gonna read the book to us when it's done too, please?
I mean, I
That would be a bright spot in the board meeting. I think.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah.
And your other student board member did send an email report to Dana and Al and I. I don't know if you have that printed. You want me to read it?
I don't have it printed, I'm sorry.
He just said he was unable to make it, but he said the school kicked off last Wednesday and Thursday. Incoming 6th graders got a warm welcome during the first all-school assembly of the year. Students were introduced to the new PBL format this year, though there was initial disappointment due to late start Wednesdays being no more. I saw a lot of excitement and enthusiasm with the possibly intensive studies such as going out and winter camping, hiking in the White Mountains. Fall sports have also kicked off. We did that with quotes, yep. Boys and girls varsity soccer started their seasons. Lately, both teams have picked up a win with the girls defeating Arlington 2-1 and the boys taking down BF 4-0 at home on Saturday.
Wow.
Middle school soccer will start their games Wednesday this week against Putney, and middle school cross country has been practicing hard in preparation for their first meet September 17th at MAU. That's all thanks from Eli White.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, any public comments? Do we have anybody out in the Zoom land? No? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to our JAMBA presentation.
Hi, everyone. We're here on behalf of Jamaica Area Mountain Bike Alliance, otherwise known as JAMBA. We're based out of Jamaica, Vermont, and we have a land use agreement with you to put a skills loop at the Jamaica Village School area. We have started breaking ground with a professional trail building team. And we've started fundraising. We've been working with and keeping in contact with Greg Frost, who's also been in contact with the trail building team, and it seems to all be working out very well. I'm going to now hand it over to our president, Jason Rickles, and he's going to explain more about the trails.
Howdy, thanks for having us here tonight. Full disclosure, I'm a Green Mountain Union teacher, so I'm on in enemy territory. But just quickly, I moved down to Jamaica a couple of years ago from Woodstock, where I was really heavily involved in VIII chapter up there, Vermont Mountain Bike Association. I kind of came chilling a little bit tonight. And it was really exciting because there was this very nascent chapter down here run by Karen, and some of you might know Heidi Pancake and Dave Marks, and a number of other folks in the community. And when I signed on, they had just secured a land access agreement with the United States government through the Army Corps of Engineers and started a project to build trail up at Ball Mountain Dam, which they've successfully completed. One trail, but a professionally built, sustainable trail, half of which was underwater during the flooding and survived pretty well intact, as a testament to sort of the modern trail building and how well it's generally done. And I was able to join JAMBA and become a part of these efforts to build trail in the area and try and drive mountain biking culture. And already on the docket as a big idea was the skills park at the Jamaica Village School, which is exciting for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I live across the street from the Jamaica Village School and I ride a lot of bikes. So, but the long and short of it is that bike parks are really exciting nexi, excuse me, I'm an English teacher, so I should get that right, nexi, not just for bike riders and people who want to enjoy mountain biking within a region, but when they're built in the village, when they're built in villages as they are throughout the state, they become community centers. So this seemed like a no-brainer, and we've cultivated some really good relationships with professional trail builders, including a fellow by the name of Brooks Scatchard, whose company is called Sinuosity. They built trail up at Stratton. They built a good amount of the trail down in Dover, as well as a lot of really amazing legacy trail up in northern Vermont. Brooks' big thing is sustainability and aesthetics of the natural environment, and so he's come in and done a whole bunch of the assessments for us and determined that we were well clear of wetlands, for example, and where we could sort of build our dream ideas while impacting the fewest number of trees. And then just recently, after working with Greg Frost, we got started. And we had, I don't know if any of you were at Jamaica Day, we had the whole thing flagged and we're kind of directing people down the hill to see what it was all about. If you see, there's a tiny little inset map here. It's a little hard to see. I brought a laminated version that's a little bit bigger. It gives you a slightly clearer sense. And I thought at the very least I could just quickly sort of tour you around what it's going to be, and then really just see if you have any questions for us as we move forward. So you can sort of see where Jamaica Village School is situated there, and to the left of the building you see the green line begin, and that's the staging area away from the main entrance of the building, so that if cars start to congregate, it won't get in the way of school operations. The whole thing would be signposted that it's not operational during school, so people aren't to use it during school except for the kids. The green line goes sort of to the end of the field there and then turns into a purple line into the woods. So that's a continuation of this phase 1 main trail, and this is what we've broken ground on. Climbs the hill up towards Worthing Road. It'll snake down the hill through what are called berms, just big bank turns, that I also coach mountain biking, and that's a really critical skill for any rider learning. So that's sort of a fun part of it. It'll shoot them back out across the field as the green line continues. skirts the playground completely, and we were given authorization from Greg Frost to remove the tetherball poles, which apparently haven't been used in many, many years. So it was a controversial decision. We discussed it at length. We all love tetherball, but Greg was actually really excited to have somebody getting them out of there for him. So into the woods on the far side of the playground, it'll split. You can just barely see there's a blue line in there for an intermediate line and a beginner line. Purple line continues through the woods back towards Depot Street, swings back up through the field just along the hill by the parking lot, and that sort of completes the loop. And that's phase one. And phase one is what we hope to have built potentially by the end of this season, in fact. It's really low impact. It really just crosses the field. So as far as the students at the school and any kids in the community who want to use the field for its obvious purposes, sports and whatnot, it won't impact that at all. And then phase two will add a few kind of significant additions. So those two orange lines are skills lines, one beginner, one intermediate, that will use the slope that goes down through the garden there, through the student garden. And we won't even impact the student garden. We'll use the existing path that's mowed through there. It's actually kind of an exciting prospect. You'll come kind of tearing out of the, I shouldn't use the words tearing out, we're talking about kids and safety. You come at a reasonable speed that your skill building has allowed you to maintain through the field, right through this corridor, through the garden, into these lines. The yellow line is a more complex skills park area. Mountain bikers of all levels benefit from rock gardens, small wooden features, and it'll have a variety of things in there for a variety of rider skill level. And then finally, and it's kind of hard to see, the faint little purple circle, which is a little bit mispositioned. It will actually be much more out of the way than this map makes it look. But that will be what commercially is referred to as a strider track, a push bike track for toddlers and young kids on smaller bikes to build skill at a very basic level. And then finally, the path, a larger loop, will be adaptive friendly, which means it'll meet a width standard, and the turns and single necessary bridge will all be suitable for an adaptive rider, a 3 or 4 wheel bicycle for a differently abled rider. So it's kind of every kind of rider conceivable resource. So, yeah. I did this all myself. No, I'm just describing it. So yeah, I mean, any questions that you as a board have for us?
Well, I just didn't know if the board wanted to, so I know Greg did meet with these guys, I didn't know if you guys wanted, Greg is here on the call, if you want to just check in with him about the impact piece, thinking of the sports field piece, mowing, like just all those things, and what his perspective is, and that might be good.
Yeah, my main concern was I just wanted you all to see and have eyes on the paths they were pushing through the playground area. They assured me that these would be, ground level paths that would, wouldn't necessarily, it wasn't like they'd be risen up or dug down lower than current grade. So for the most part, it should be as minimally intrusive, but it is kind of, there is some of it that is right out in the play area. Being a pre-K current building, it's surely not a concern for me. But I thought you all would want to see all this and clear this before they started digging the playground.
Okay, so no major concern, you just wanted to let us know that it would have some impact on the playground area at level?
Yeah, I mean, it is a dirt path through the middle, through the playground, and it will be a couple of them by the looks of things. It actually looks more invasive on the on the pictures than it did when the flags were on the ground. There's still a good amount of space there to be able to play games and whatnot. Even if you wanted to avoid all the paths, there's still a good piece there that you'd be able to use. But like I said, I just I just wanted to make sure you all had seen that before we gave them the go ahead to start, really doing the main construction there. So
Thanks, Greg.
as long as you're all happy with it, I'm happy.
Anybody else have any questions?
Okay. No, it's just, you said that during the school day, there wouldn't be people allowed to use it. If someone happened to get on it in some way, I don't know how that would happen, but with that playground and potentially preschool kids being on there, is there a way we could put either some kind of thing across, nothing substantial, but just something to alert people if they happen to end up on it, which they shouldn't. I'm sure the signage will be extensive, but.
That's the hope, is that, it has a single staging area for the whole thing, like a single entry and exit. So the idea would be, one big part of phase 2 will be a kiosk. Might actually be a part of phase 1. A big kiosk, and kiosks as trailheads are big deals because they can provide messaging for the trail itself, but they can also be a community message board. They can give you some flexibility as far as what you want to educate the users about. And that would sort of be first and foremost, like, this is a school closed during the school day. And so again, the hope would be that the signage at the singular staging area would take care of that. That said, it's really not a big deal to rope a trail. Just like a ski trail, it's literally just roping it as sort of the universal sign of, like, it's absolutely closed. So yeah, that's definitely something to be addressed.
I was just gonna mention it, at Newbrook, which is right up the road, we have a student built last year a disc golf course on the back of our property. And we had similar signage out that, hey, we'd rather not people be during the school day, and we've never had an issue with it. So that's I think these are kind of multi-use places. We have a lot of people park in front of Newbrook when they're just riding their street bikes or gravel grinders, and they never park there during the day. I think people come to understand what they're allowed to do around schools.
Yeah, and I can also comment that this would be a JAMBA project, and sort of the ethic of our chapter, but VIMBA at large too, is riders educating other riders. So it'd be the kind of thing that the JAMBA community would really try to be part of the messaging, not policing, but as users really try to influence the way that the trails would get accessed.
Thanks, guys. I think it's a great idea. I love the idea. I'm just trying to think through, do we need to sign any kind of a memorandum, an agreement, something to kind of codify who would maintain, all of the ins and outs of that?
We do have a land access agreement in place with the SU.
Okay.
And that stipulates, and we can revisit that, but it stipulates that JAMBA's on the hook for maintenance, long-term maintenance. We're on the hook for the whole thing. We're gonna fundraise and pay for it. We're going through a professional trail builder so that it's built sustainably, so that it's, not something that will require intensive maintenance, but rather we can have long-term hopes with just volunteer maintenance. It's a volunteer organization, so though it is member supported, so you pay a VIMBA membership if anybody's thinking about throwing $60 to VIMBA, $30 comes to JAMBA. But so we're on the hook for long-term maintenance. It's really something that the SU hosts on the property as the landowner, and then the user group, we take care of everything. So.
Me?
I'm sorry, I think this was probably already addressed way back when we did the land use agreement, but humor me because I can't remember that far back. Did we discuss at all liability concerns for a user being injured on the course that would be like on our SU land? Has that been addressed at all?
So the land access agreement does clear landowner of liability. It's a VIMBA-backed document that is sort of the standard issue for any private landowner as well as corporate landowner. There are schools that exist as landowners in land access agreements with VIMBA chapters. So I don't want to speak as an attorney because I'm an English teacher. But again, the land access agreement, like we're working one out with Stratton right now, for example, for a parcel up there. Probably actually shouldn't have said that.
We've got many ideas and many places that we're working on.
But and it's built on the VAST model, the snow access model, the long trail model, all of these shared land use models. And again, I don't want to speak to the exact legality of the document because I'd be speaking out of my depth, but it covers landowner for liability because it's in public use. And VIMBA manages the sort of state liability laws in that regard.
Okay, thank you. You satisfied the insurance agent.
So, Bob, are you satisfied with our land use agreement?
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever, I mean, she knows more than I do about this, but I would say that as long as we're not negligent in any action that causes someone to get hurt on the property, we should be fine. And I can't imagine how we would be negligent in someone getting hurt on the trail that they're maintaining. So that's my guess, so I'm guessing we're fine. Not a lawyer, former social studies teacher, so.
Don't leave our stuff on the trail.
I was just thinking that same thing.
Or don't let Greg with the new tractor try to.
Go to the jumps. Stay off the jumps.
Don't go near them and pick a rock up into the biker's head.
And we would encourage all of you to come once it's done and use it
Ride bikes.
with your kids.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
my kid cannot wait.
Do we need any kind of a motion or just a?
Think we've done it all.
Or just to continue on.
Just a, keep going. All right.
Happy to report back to when phase 1 is effectively done and start talking about phase 2. So,
Awesome.
and spread the word, please, because we're fundraising like crazy. So, or we're starting to, I should say. So there's a QR code on that handout I gave everyone. It does take you right to PayPal.
Yeah, I was just saying, Karen, if we could get a copy,
We'll send it to you.
send the email, we can make it part of, matter of the record. So, yeah.
And if you would send maybe to the two principals, an email that we could share, or something we could share on Facebook.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because our families do look at that, and I think that this would be a really nice boon for our families.
Right on. Yeah.
For sure.
We're about to start that marketing onslaught. So.
We're also talking to Kevin at Project Bike Tech about having the kids being involved and learning trail building and maintenance and things like that also, so.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to come in right on it.
And it just one last thing, it is a really neat, it's not unique to Vermont, but trail building is an industry in Vermont. Mountain bike trail building is, we're up around 36 companies statewide, many of them very, very, very successful, and it's pretty neat. Northern Vermont through Johnson actually is offering I think it's a 2-semester certificate program in trail building. Some of the racer kids from the high school, middle school league that I get to coach in have availed themselves of that program. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool sort of Vermont homegrown culture that we're psyched to have in Jamaica, and it's starting to grow down here. So pretty exciting.
That's great.
Thank you.
And I'll leave you with this. This is safe territory for you because this classroom is one of our new teachers who's a Green Mountain graduate. So Erica Knockenhauer.
Flatlander, so.
So she's pretty new. You might have had her. Erica Knockenhauer. She's relatively young. Just started with us.
Yeah.
This is her health classroom. So
Oh wow, that's.
there you go. So it's
I
like
feel so old. Thank you.
full circle.
That's hilarious. Yeah, she had Mr. Rickles. Cool. Well, thank you guys for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. We're excited.
All right, moving on to long-term planning discussion. Review presentation for community forum.
Yep. All right, so I have a slideshow. So I met, just to give you a little background, so at the last meeting, you guys appointed or volunteered Lindsay and Peter, voluntold them to meet with me. And we've met twice for, 3 to 4 hours total. I left the first meeting with a page of notes, crafted a slideshow, Heidi was contributing some of the financial elements to it. We met again this morning. There was, I won't say I started over, but there were some substantive changes to it. So they still haven't seen the substantive changes yet. They saw the draft this morning. So I want to just keep in mind that this is a draft. This is for you guys to all give feedback to, so that when we have the community meetings to talk about the proposal, this would be, in theory, the presentation that we'd use. So we want to talk about, does it meet all the things we want it to meet? Are there things we want to include that are not in it? We can go through it just sort of like quick view, and then we can go back and do it screen by screen if you want and talk a little bit more. And just to remind, like, this is not a presentation of the slideshow. This is the board reviewing a draft of a slideshow. And the distinction is discussion should not be about the content of it from the community, but really more about the board, what they think about the presentation. And then at the end, I'm gonna start you by thinking about this. We get a good conversation, say, about like who presents this. And there was a lot of this going on. But in the end, I think we agree that there should be a team, a board member, maybe a chair, I don't know, and myself with input from Heidi as well. Lori will not be at the community meetings, but Heidi will be. So she's taking the lead on this. And so and I think that whatever that team is, that once the feedback comes back from today, that we have another meeting to roll through it again and then talk about who's, how we're dividing up the labor, that kind of thing. So that's my pre-pitch. Is there anything either of you guys want to add to that?
You got it.
All right, I'm gonna try to do this so my email doesn't show up on the screen. Hold on.
Thank you, Lindsay.
There. All right, so there you go. There we have it. So I will try to walk us through this. So that's the title page. Should be hopefully not too controversial. That's where we start. Brief overview of the agenda. So to talk a little about the purpose of this work, why we're doing this, why we're talking about this. Brief review of the past 6 years, very brief. The actual nuts and bolts of the proposal and the explanation for it, which is the bulk of the thing, which includes the financial implications, and then questions and comments at the end. So that's sort of the timeline. So, all right. So this slide, the idea was that we would start off with like, why? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this proposal? Why are we doing long-term planning? And I think it came out of the idea of improving educational quality while simultaneously reducing cost. And I have the years going back to June of 2018. I think whoever's presenting it could go into a little more depth around each stage, from the hot summer June night through the 15 plans, through the task force for elementary and secondary, through the single campus model in Townsend versus now this single elementary campus model. So all the different facets of that, and kind of roll out that in a little bit more detail maybe. I don't know, depends on how people feel about that. But that would be sort of the starting of the why we're doing this. And we lay out what we've done thus far to show that this was not a overnight, fly by the seat of our pants concept. The premise of this, and I've been thinking a little bit about this slide. This is the 10-year projection, which shows, a slight reduction, but kind of level, a lot more level than the one we looked at 6 years ago, probably. So I think it was and we can show both of them if you want, to show like the last 10 years versus the next 10 to show how it was a decline, but now there's a stabilization. I don't know. Again, these are just questions I've had in my head, so you guys can think about that as we go through it and then come back to this. So those are the 10-year projections. So just to talk about declining enrollment as one of the whys. And So this starts with getting into the actual study. So we've reviewed all the previous work, and now we're to the current thing, the spring of 2024 consolidation study by Stevens and Associates. I have two things linked up in the corner because in theory after this we would share this slideshow on the web pages. One of them links to the full matrix and appendices of the Stevens report, which includes all of the buildings' FCA reports. Well, all of them, the 3 elementary schools FCA reports, plus the full matrix and the descriptors. So it's like, what was it, 200, 120, 200 pages? It was
More than
Like 250 pages.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a long document. It's on the website. This is just a link to it. And then the other
Can
link,
you define FCA just for those playing along?
yeah, it's the facility condition assessments right here on the slide. I've tried to use abbreviations, but I've tried to spell it out the first time in the slide so people can see that. So that's what that is. The other link brings you to the board recording of this board in this room. Or no, June, what was that? Were we in the library maybe?
I think it was here.
Maybe we were up here. Where, oh, we were in here, because this is where Brad and Diane presented the actual result of that consolidation study. And if you, I even wrote, we started at the 23-minute mark, you get to, they were right over there and they start the presentation. So people want to see like, where is this based on? They can see all the documents and go back immediately and see the presentation. And so yeah, so we started, the elements that were considered in the study were the long-term facility condition assessments of those 3 buildings. So that's sort of the element number 1. And element number 2 were the site factors and the development of a matrix for assessing with criteria. And so this is where you get into a little bit of, so my first thought, you know, I think many of you may remember the Matrix, not the movie, but the Matrix here. I think there's 6 different categories that we broke down into multiple points, right? That I thought about just showing the 6 categories on one slide, and I can do that just as like here's the 6 categories we looked at, and then delve into each one individually. So I have a slide for each one, but if you want a sort of a front slide that shows the 6, I could do that first. So that's something for you to think about. But the first one gets into, it talks about the cost benefit analysis, and this is the one that has a little bit of information about the buildings themselves, the square footage, the years built and upgraded, number of stories, and then it gets into a little bit of the financial stuff. And then you can see, well, a couple things. One, on the bottom of each slide where we talk about one of the 6 elements, it shows the score that each school received, or each campus received. And I'm calling it Newfane, not New Brook, intentionally, because the site is in Newfane. So that was sort of an intentional thing, and I'll get to why later. But at any rate, there's 3 campuses. There's 54 possible points in this section. You can see Jamaica has 21, Townsend has 26, Newfane has 44. And we can explain the point system and how that works later. But I wanted to show, for example, why, in this case, we tried to break down one area in each section to show why. So like in this one, if you look at the 2023 FCI, this is the immediate needs. You can see the dollar amount that each building needs.
I cannot see that, just for reference. Can you say it out loud?
So in reference, the Newbrook number is much
My eyes are
lower.
not that good. Thank you.
All right, the Newbrook number for immediate needs is much lower. It's 21 grand compared to $500,000 compared to 200 and change. So that was like starting point. And then as you get into 3 and 5 year projections around the deferred maintenance, what are the immediate needs and then what's moving forward, you can see Newbrook goes up to as high as 400, whereas Townsend's at 1.4 million and Jamaica's at 700,000. So just to show like that's how, when you see those numbers that different, that's how Newfane has a higher score. And just to try to get it in people's minds that they're thinking it's a clinical thing with a matrix with a score assessed based on criteria. Trying to like really spell it out as clearly as we can. And then under this, and so the factors are underlined, so this is factor number 1. It has some examples of what's included in that as subheadings in parentheses. And again, I could list them as bullets, but I was running out of how to do the space where you can't even see this from there.
Yeah,
I didn't want to make it too convoluted.
less is more.
Right, so trying to get one screen for each of these things led me here, and then I was like, today I added this, these guys didn't even see this. This was a way to show this. And in the end, the way that this works is, each of the schools get a percentage. So 21 out of 54 will yield a percentage, and that score goes into, and then there's a multiplier for how much this factor is worth, because these are all weighted differently. And then it gets multiplied by that, and then you get a final score at the end that tallies it all up. So that's why I want to show the score. So you can see in each one which school, which building is higher or lower. So that's conceptually how I did it, and this is the first one. Goes, guys.
Should we wait till you're all done before we?
I defer to Al, how you want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, if you have questions as we go
Well, I
on.
was just thinking, like, if I really didn't know anything about this process, was to me really, I thought it was really collaborative and really well thought out. You know, I thought it was well worth the money. I think that we need to explain like who was there, who was voting. You know what I mean? Like that, how much diversity we had there in the room and how much expertise.
On the committee?
On the committee. Cause like we had two architects and we had we had Greg there. Like we had just the right people there, I felt like. And I felt like I was in good hands when we were talking about like what should be weighted, and like I didn't weigh in on those things. I didn't know how to weigh in, but I knew that the right people were there. And I think that some kind of explanation about that might be good.
Can you save that thought? Because I think at the end, maybe
Yeah.
I'll do another set of notes for a third draft.
Sure.
Oh, do you want to take some notes? That'd be great. You can actually, if you don't mind doing it on here, then it's all in one
Yeah,
place.
yeah, just because it was
Very broad.
Yeah, you were there.
You were there. All right, so that's sort of the first one, right? The second category is existing facility conditions, which looks at a variety of things about what's existing. You can see the subcomponents. In this one, I picked this particular graphic, and some of them have pictures, some have graphics. This one in particular to show the difference between the size of a plot of land, 0.6 acres versus 10 versus 6.6, and the septic capacity, 150, 240, 85, and parking as well. But those are just a few examples of how this one was measured, so that when you see at the bottom, there's 57 possible points. The highest one again is Newfane, but it's only at 35. And so that is because it's talking about the existing facility conditions. So like none of our buildings really scored super high in that, but certainly there were some that are higher than others. So you can kind of get a sense of how that's played out. And I gotta delete that green thing at the top. Can you write delete green thing on number 2? Yep. All right. The third one is the site conditions. This is potential for expansion, fields, playgrounds, etc. This time this is the only one I think that I actually highlighted a clip of the actual matrix so that people could see how we actually did it. Because I wanted to try to get different things going. So you can see there's 2 categories, ball fields and playgrounds, that are part of site conditions. And you can see how the scores were, if you can accommodate all the ball fields, you get 3. If you can only accommodate 1/3 of them, you only get 1. And if you can't have any ball fields, you get 0. And the same thing for playgrounds. So you can see where the rubric identifiers came in, and then how the 3 buildings were scored. And again, it's Jamaica, Townsend, Newfane, the same as the scoring below. So you can see again, so Jamaica and Newfane were both significantly higher than Townsend on this because of the site. Like there's no land, so there's no ball fields. So like those things are obvious. But Jamaica 36, Townsend 18, and Newfane 39. So that's how we did that one. Site infrastructure, this one was a little tougher because it's infrastructure. So we have some lovely pictures from the reports, from the AOE reports of a couple different buildings. And then just the cumulative scores, again, out of 15 possible points, 8, 6, and 12, reading from Jamaica to Newfane. And then transportation, accessibility, and again, number of families impacted, travel time, etc. This one's worth 9 points. And you can see Townsend has the higher score of this one because it's centrally located, so there's less disruption of travel time, kind of makes sense. And then Newfane and Jamaica are both lower. I think Newfane has a higher score probably because there's more people and less people would be impacted by that than going the other direction, so to speak. That's the score there. And then, I think this is the last one maybe, is the school educational capacity and programming space. And I add the word current in front of this because this is we spent a lot of time talking about this in the committee around potential for expansion versus current. And I mean, the example was, so Jamaica had more than ample room for their current programming, so they would have had a really high score, but some of that was because there was 12 kids. And so the building was really empty, and so therefore, you know, you try to figure out how you want to weight that because it isn't really a function of the building so much as it was the enrollment. And so that was that, but you can see how Jamaica actually scored the highest on this, on 15 possible points, they had a total of 15. And so we wanted to honor that, the fact that there was a lot of space, but the reality is because it was current use only with the 12 students, it's not super meaningful in the long run. And so this one is weighted, I think only 5% maybe of the overall score, because we gave it a lower weight. And then I include the current enrollment on that just because it's current. We're talking about current capacity programming space, so I put the total numbers of our current enrollment in there, which was as of, you know, beginning, first day of school. So people can see what those numbers look like. And, you know, we're talking about 200 kids. All right, and then sort of put it all together, add them all up, use the multipliers, and what do you get? So again, these 6 things you see under the summary are the 6 things we just reviewed, and each of them have scores, and then you can see the total. So out of a possible 100%, Newfane has a 73% score, so 73 out of 100, meaning it's the highest score. Jamaica at 52 is next, and Townsend at 45. So I just drew a circle on that to show that was the higher score using the clinical assessment with the numbers. So that brings us to sort of the conclusion, if you will. And then again, I call it the Newfane campus. And, you know, we spent a little bit of time talking about things that we have to be upfront with. For example, we know that Newbrook is not centrally located. Like, that's just the reality of it. Despite that, it still had the higher score, and again, partly because Townsend's site is so inexpandable. Is that a word? Small. So we want to recognize that, but we want to also say that, you know, however, after careful analysis and study over 6 years, we believe that this option is the best at this time, given what we have. So it isn't the silver bullet, it isn't the ideal. It's making the best of what we have in a situation that these are the 3 sites that we have. These are our campuses. The visual here is, some of you have seen this before, this is the plotting of our families with a little population marker, and the red dots are the 3 campuses. So you can get a sense of where the people are in comparison to the dots. And the colors are for where the town of residence. So Brookline is merged with Newfane in this residence because they go to assign the same school as their home school. So that's that visual. We want to talk a little bit about, you know, the educational benefits. So part of this whole conversation originated with banding, which was the one takeaway I think that I've heard the most since the June of 2018 meeting, was that all the other things that were good or bad or different, well, with the exception of the 6th grade, which happened right away, this was the one thing that we talked about. So you have 2 single grade classrooms together in one building. There's a lot of things that happen. So for starters, you have no multi-age classrooms. You know, at JVS last year, you were running classes that had 3 grades. So that you don't have that opportunity. You don't have teachers having to figure out 3 grades of kids together in a room, plus the variations that those kids might have above and below. It's probably more like 5 or 6 or 7 grades. So you wouldn't have any multi-grade classrooms. You'd have certainly the potential for increased teacher collaboration, like grade teacher collaboration. You have the possibility of teacher specialization. Where they do this in the 6th grade here, where one of the 6th grade teachers does the STEM and one of them does the humanities. I'm not saying that you would have to do that, but there's a potential for that if they're in the same place. You'd have larger social groups for students. I think that's something you guys have talked about and are aware of. No more one girl in the class issue that we hear about from families. that if you had kids who had social interaction challenges with each other, with peers, you could, right now you can't separate them. They're together from kindergarten through. And now you have the potential to kind of maybe put them in different classrooms. One of the things that Lindsay wanted us to really highlight was the potential for increased enrichment opportunities and also for support as well. So as you have 2 third grade classrooms next to each other when they are doing their intervention times, the potential for how they group those kids with 2 teachers could be very different and could offer some opportunities that one single operating third grade class in Townsend might not be able to do by itself. So one thing we want to highlight, and again, what we do with it is up to us, right, collectively, but the opportunity is there. And of course, the opportunities for collaborative learning with bigger groups, project-based learning is something that has been sort of pushed through. A lot of schools now are doing some more in terms of that, and certainly Leland Gray is, so to have that train go in that direction is very positive there as well. All right, there are challenges, obviously. We wanted to be forthright about those challenges. One of them is the slideshow. Here we go. Increased travel time for some students as the site is in the southern portion of the district. We know that that's a challenge. We tried to come up with a couple of ways to maybe mitigate some of those challenges. Not eliminate, but mitigate. Perhaps, Greg, and we've talked with Greg a little bit about this around the idea of an express bus. So, if you have a bus in Jamaica originating on the far side of Jamaica, it's not stopping all the way to Newfane. It's at a certain point, it's done. And it just goes to Newbrook, and that speeds it up, and so the express concept.
Communal bus stops.
What's that?
Communal bus
stops, but I mean, even like maybe after they leave Jamaica itself, there's no more pickups or something.
Yeah.
Like just ways to speed, so that those kids, the furthest kids away, aren't gonna be on the bus for significant chunks, in ways that we don't want them to be, but of course, there's gonna be some adjustment. We talked about the idea that, when you're doing something like this, you have one school. Right now our start times are based on transportation, and so like Townsend starts a similar time to Leland and Gray and ends a similar time to Leland and Gray because buses are all here in the same place. Newport's different because it's in a different place. Jamaica was different because it was in a different place. But you could think about that collectively, how you might want to reorganize that, and the possibilities are endless there. But just want to put that there as a possible mitigation. We talked about the idea of the hometown school. And that it's gone in certain cases in this scenario. But we also talked about it, and actually I want to give Greg credit for this because he kept saying this to me and just like right in my ear the whole time. And finally I was like, yeah, Greg, you're right, you can stop saying that, we get it. It was pretty insightful coming from Greg, I thought, because he's not the educator. But his thing was like, these people are worried about the school going away, but the reality is the school's the people. Right, the teachers, the staff, and so those people aren't going away, they're just going somewhere else with the kids. And so the idea that what makes a school welcoming is the people that are in it, and that won't change. So you're losing the building, but the people that make it special are moving with the kids. So obviously the sense of community that comes, that's something we've heard and talked a lot about. One side, again, this doesn't fully mitigate it, but it is a point to bring up, that it does actually just broaden the community. So if we think of it as not losing a community, but broadening the community. And not just for kids, we talked about this from a parent standpoint, like you show up as a parent with your kindergartner and like the other people in the room, like they become like your group, right? You travel with them all the way through high school. These are your parents who are in class with your kids who are in class with yours. With that, we've just broadened that for the families as well.
We started earlier.
Right, you started it earlier, correct, yeah.
Instead of waiting until 6th grade and we all get together.
Yep. And I think it allows kids to find their people earlier.
Yeah.
Which is part of this too. And of course the transitions, if we do this, that there's gonna be transitions for many students. There isn't really there's gonna be a transition, there's no way to really mitigate that, but there'll be a lot of familiar faces to help make that easier. Was one point we came up with there. So that was on the challenges slide. And then, we talk a lot about small schools and how we really want to ensure that we're saving small schools and say small schools are good. And we want to kind of just take a step back and just pause on that for a moment to talk about small schools, because that's true, small schools are real good. And the research, I mean, even this is going back to 97, so the research has not changed, that small schools are better across the board, knowing your students, keeping their work meaningful, and having these collaborative communities. In this same study, they define a small elementary school as being 300 to 400.
We're there.
So we want to just put the context around this, that what we have now are not small schools, all right? They're very small schools. Micro schools.
Micro.
You know? And so the research, when you hear research about small schools, they're talking about at the elementary level 300 to 400 kids. So that's just something to keep in mind. And yes, the research continues about what small. There's been disagreement on what means small. This is another study, more recent one, that talks about that, you know, fewer than 400 is really small. That's what they're talking about when the research defines the good things. So yes, small is better, but small is maybe, you have to remember what that definition is. All right, so then we wanted to just pause for a moment, perhaps a moment of levity here, but we want to talk about, this goes back to the reason I didn't call it Newbrook, or I want to get away from the Newbrook name, because what we're really doing is consolidating elementary school into one. It happens to be at a campus that the district owns in Newfane, right? That's currently populated by students from Newfane and Brookline and some other choice here and there. But really what you're doing is you're creating a new elementary school in an existing building. And so how you choose to brand that, how you engage the community in branding that is going to be really important. I used AI to come up with a couple of like Leland and Gray Elementary School or the West River Elementary School. And then I had, I'm gonna give full credit to Kayla Anthony, who stopped by my office just to chat one afternoon. And I was showing her this and she's like, why don't we just call it New JAMBA Town? It's like all of the names of the 4 towns combined into one. And I was like, you know what, that's a horrible idea. But I'm gonna use it for this slideshow just to illustrate the fact that we can do whatever we want, right? It's a brand income, yeah. So, New JAMBA Town. All the towns' names are included and whatever. Just have a little fun with this, but the moment of levity, that this is a reminder that you have to rebrand when you go through this process. All right. Other upcoming challenges. So we're starting to get into Heidi's world a little bit over here. But my little CAPS, Commissions and Healthcare, oh my. We have this thing right now going on, this Commission on Future Public Education. It's really just started their work this summer. They're going to be looking at, and I've shared this with you guys before, the appropriate numbers of schools, of districts, and of SUs to carry forth the vision that they create around what public education looks like in Vermont. So this stuff is already on the table. If you think the idea is that we're not inviting the discussion of consolidation, we might be getting ahead of it. And just like Act 46, the districts that merged for Act 46, I think, were wise, and from what I understand, the board chairs were involved in lots of lengthy conversations in front of this, right? I think you were the chair at the time. Lots of conversations with the other boards of our SU to kind of think about this. So thinking about how to be ahead of it before, how to make something happen on our terms before something happens to us, I think was the expression Lindsay used. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're going to be coming up with a preliminary legislative report in December, which I don't know what that's going to look like. I've listened in a couple of the meetings. I can't imagine how by December they're going to have anything preliminarily to share, but this information is going to have an impact on the spring session. There may be recommendations, there may be things that come out of this. It could be around funding, we don't know. Keep in mind they changed the funding mechanism in the middle of budget season last year, or this current year, because of the loophole that they want to close. So there's going to be something coming forward, and then the January after that, a year after that, the final recommendations from this commission are due to the legislature. So that session, the spring 26 session, they're definitely going to be rolling out some changes that if they don't do it in the spring of 25. So the next 2 legislative sessions, I know Emily's on the call, are probably going to be big. There's going to be recommendations that could be major changes. So that's one thing to consider. And if that wasn't enough, the return of the excess spending cap for FY26, Heidi's going to bring us through a little bit of that as best we can with what we have. Mm-hmm. To talk a little bit about what the impact of that potentially might be, maybe. Very hesitant about how I phrase this. But that's coming back for our upcoming budget season. If those of you that don't remember that mechanism, if our per pupil cost exceeds a number that they give us, to raise the amount of taxes, let's say the number we have is $200 more than that number, we get taxed on $400 more to raise that 200. So it's a double taxation on the amount over the threshold. So that'll be back. And historically, I don't think we were under the threshold in this district.
Never.
We usually walk right up to the edge.
I mean, sometimes we were, dancing on the edge. They're already expecting another double-digit increase in healthcare costs. Don't know where that's going to be, but it was big double digits last year. 16. I don't know why it would be much different this year. So that's, and then of course, salary increases for existing contracts and so on and so forth. So these are kind of the big things that are out there. All right, so getting into the financial implications. Again, I've stamped this as draft because I want to re-emphasize, if you're joining us now, you're watching the video, or whatever, we want to be able to say when we do this presentation that the numbers we're talking about are draft numbers, all right? They are the savings that we presented to you guys in our document at the last board meeting were based on this year's operational costs minus 2 elementary schools. They were not next year's operational costs. They didn't have the healthcare and the contractual increases or any other budgetary increases that we might see coming down the line. This was this year, FY25 dollars, if we yanked 2 schools out last year, what it would have been this year. So just I'm really nervous about this part of it because I really want to make sure people aren't coming back, well, you said you were going to save $1 million. You said there was 12.5% tax. So like all those things that we're going to be putting out there to the community, we want to be able to say, this is the best guess based on this year's apple to apple comparison and not this year to next year's potential increase. So that's an important point. I feel like I beat a dead horse with these guys in the meeting, but I want to put that disclaimer out there. So this was just a clip from the document that we gave you guys last month with the potential savings longer term with the reduced capital needs with 2 less buildings, year 1 savings, year 2 savings. All right, I am gonna stop talking.
My turn.
Your turn. So I just gotta walk us through the next couple of slides.
I am piggybacking on the last slide, which showed the $1,050,000 in perpetuity savings. Again, made up of a wide range of things at a higher level, not specific. So I wanna reiterate what Bob just said with, we're using the known.
Beat that dead horse, Heidi.
Known numbers from the current fiscal year, and this doesn't take into account putting in a modular building, how you pay for it, that kind of thing. I wanted to just give an overview of the savings of one building using the exact same budget we have voter approved this year. And so on the top table, you are seeing the education spending with the middle column showing the reduction of $1,050,000 and showing the bottom line of the education spending. The variance is over what we're currently in the middle of spending right now. And then the table below it is going on to show, using the same long-term weighted ADM, the same yield, to give you a cost per pupil, which is significantly lower than what we currently have. Again, there's a lot of variables that can change that, and we know going forward that the yield is not going to be the same. We don't have numbers yet on long-term weighted ADM. So again, all just using same information from the current year.
I know some of this may be hard to see, right,
Yeah.
the numbers, but we'll be able to share this with you guys.
Interestingly, I just want to point out, when I was doing the numbers, the increase from FY24 to FY25 is almost the exact same number of savings that we're dealing with. It was like 1,051,000 some. So that was very interesting. I just want to. So again, that number could change depending on if in fact we everybody voted and closed the schools, the 1 million was just a higher level cuts that we expected with the consolidation. Okay, you can go on to the next slide.
Is your question first?
Yeah, I was wondering if this slide could include definitions of things like the yield and the ADM that are not
It
common
could, it's about to
knowledge.
get real busy, but we could have
Or
some stuff at
maybe-
the bottom so that people who are just rolling in could see something at the bottom.
Yeah, or even a definition slide that precedes this one.
Okay.
To explain what those things
Yep.
are.
You know, one slide to describe ed finance in Vermont, you can do that, right? That's a joke.
That little steep.
That's a good suggestion though.
You need a whole PowerPoint for that.
Okay.
Yeah, right. You really
Either
do.
just print out a sheet, a guide sheet for people.
So this table, these tables, the top table is the one that's actually what Lori prepared and is using current and accurate data with everything that came in as we got tax rates and everything else. So it shows you how much taxes went up per $100,000 house site value. That's in red at the very right side. You can, for instance, Brookline is $178 per 100,000 and so on. So I
And
took.
this is the one that's in your annual report this year.
It's, and that one wasn't with the current tax rates because the CLAs hadn't come out yet. So this is tweaked a little bit from that one. So then the bottom slide is what your tax rate would look based on what I was just showing you in the slide before this. So with the center column, it says FY25 tax rate after CLA with only one school. And so the difference between the tax rate, I show the variance between what you currently have and what it could have been with the savings of $1,050,000. You will see that significantly different, but again, it's based on a yield that's the same and long-term weighted ADM that's the same. So Brookline, instead of $178 per annual, per $100,000 house site value, is negative 165.
So that's the swing you would have had if we had done this last year.
Right, a year earlier.
Exactly. So again, lots of variables, but with this current.
What does that number signify? It's how much tax you would pay on a $100,000 house.
Yeah.
So
This
So
amount is the
it's a
increase or
reduction.
decrease
From
per
the current.
$100,000.
So instead of paying an additional 178, you would have saved 165.
Gotcha. Thank you, Lindsay.
So it's a pretty good swing.
$150 swing.
Yeah.
And again, this year's budget,
Yeah.
3 schools,
Can't
this year's
emphasize that
budget, 1
enough,
school.
because I'm not promising anything for the future.
Right.
And so the next slide I put together based on a request from Lindsay or the group that met this morning. I am hesitant, and I'm gonna suggest we not include it, but I'll explain why. So the request was to put together, let me get this correct, comparing the FY25 tax rates with the same education spending, but with the threshold going into effect. So I emailed the AOE to get specific information as to what the statewide average, you need the average statewide per pupil spending in order to figure out the calculation. However, when she sent it to me, it didn't look right because it was so far off of what we keep talking about FY26 threshold to be. So I reached out to Lori, who was off today, and I said, something's not right, I'm missing something. And I realized with talking to her as we were talking it through, that you can't compare apples to apples because you had equalized pupil numbers in 24 and you have long-term weighted ADM in 25. And so in order for me to actually do apples to apples, I would need what the education funding was across the entire state and what the long-term weighted ADM for 24 was across the state total. So this second bottom table, it has there's no way I could say there's any accuracy. Lori and I together looked at what they were predicting for the statewide average with long-term weighted ADM for next year, which is just preliminary numbers on the table, like nobody is making any promises. And I reduced it by a couple $100 to get a $13,000 number in order to do this calculation. And so with that number, taking into account the same long-term weighted ADM and the same yield, this is how I created the numbers on this bottom chart.
So the top chart is the same as the top chart on the previous
Right,
page.
yeah,
It's the current, right? What the implications were for current tax rate for this year. And this one is a
Fictitious.
fictitious estimate
Because
using numbers that aren't really available.
What would happen if once you're
If the
double
threshold
taxed?
was in place
Right.
this year, basically, what would have happened if the threshold had been in place this year
Right.
to show, because the thinking is we probably would have been above it, and so the tax rate might have gone up higher, and therefore the difference between that and what the consolidation would be a greater difference. Is in essence what we're trying to show.
Right,
But-
right.
But it's not really, you can't really do it. I think logic dictates that it probably would be, but the numbers, it's like plugging up, doesn't
Right.
really work.
Right. So that's why I'm a little leery about leaving this in, because I have some basis for what I created, but we know the long-term weighted ADM is going to be different. We know the yields are gonna be different, and we're not sure about what FY24 had for those numbers because they didn't exist at that time.
But what we do know is the number they're using right now for next year's cap is, they're throwing around stuff, it's not official.
$16,108 is
So
what they
that's-
keep throwing around as the threshold.
So you might be tempted to compare it to this number, but again, this is FY25, not FY26. So yes, it looks like we'd be under the cap with the consolidation, but we don't actually know that yet.
If you were to take this potentially $16,108 per pupil cost cap that they're throwing around and compare it to your current budget right now, your per pupil costs are $16,397, is it? 91. And I did a quick calculation, and you would need to cut 260-ish thousand to get your education spending below next year's limit.
While operating 3 buildings.
Correct. So, I mean, again,
Yeah, I know, it's a
lot
lot.
of information. Yes, Scotty.
So that looks to me like, or correct me if I'm wrong, you're telling us that in year one, we'd be really close to being under the cap. And that's given all of those other costs for.
What we're saying is, maybe.
But we're saying that to the best of our ability, we could be under the cap on year one, and that's with all of the additional costs it's gonna take.
I think it's safe to say that the closest you're gonna get to it is if you do the consolidation.
Right. I
And
think.
if you don't, you're probably not gonna be under the cap.
So I haven't started any preliminary budget numbers. The SU, we have to do that assessment first before I start looking at each individual budget. But we know that the increases for health insurance are gonna be high. We know that the negotiated raises are there. And so I have not created an idea of what that overall budget would be, that education spending number, but it's clearly gonna be more than what we're looking at right now. And you're already over the cap for next year with your current budget, if that helps.
So again, process that for a second, we'll continue on with the slideshow, and then as we get to we need to know will people make sense of any of this? Will we confuse people more? How do we wanna make it clean so people understand the issues without convoluting it with the this year, next year thing? Yeah.
I said something to Al, maybe you ought to put the governor's letter in there.
I was almost gonna bring up that governor's letter.
Yeah.
Lori and I read
That one that came out today, yeah.
We expect the yield to probably tank. That was Lori's words as we were talking and looking over the letter today. The yield's probably going to tank, which means your savings, which we keep throwing around as 12 cents if you were to consolidate, 12 cents on tax rate is probably gonna be less than that if the yield tanks. And there's no way to know what.
With a consolidation.
With a
Without a
consolidation.
consolidation.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, yeah, but yeah, after the VSBA letter that I shared with you guys last time, and then this one, he's basically like doubling down on what they said. He's like, yeah, and you better do this. So, yeah, it's an interesting perspective on this, but I think everyone's pretty serious about thinking about how to reduce expenses. So, all right, let's continue through this. So I think this is the fake one, right?
This is the one that I'm looking for your input as to whether you want it.
Keep that, all right, we'll come back to that, but that's that one, okay.
Okay.
So then the next thing, we move away from financials for a little bit because everyone's brain's spinning. And Colin's like going down over there. Don't worry, Colin, it's okay. I wanted to highlight two parts of the articles of agreement that are relevant to all of this conversation and to have it, as close as I could here so you guys can see this. In Article 14, school closing, obviously talks about that no school shall be closed without the elector of the town in which the school is located consents to closure. And closing a school means, they define it, what a closure means no longer using the facility in the provision of direct educational services to students. So that's the school closure piece. So I think everyone kind of knew that. We've talked about this, but just wanted to show you the language. And then the other one has to do with what happens to buildings if you do close, if the towns do agree to close. Article 7 has to do with the real and personal property owned by the district. Section 1 was about the merger when it happened. Section B is about what happens if you get rid of it. So that's why it skips to B. In the event that, and at such subsequent times as, the Unified District Board of Directors determines in its discretion, and there's a bunch of middle stuff, but I try to make it readable, that the property will not be used in direct delivery of student educational programs, the district shall, this is a must, offer for sale such real property to the town in which such property is located for the sum of $1, subject to all encumbrances on record, the assumption of payment of all outstanding bonds and notes, et cetera, et cetera. There are no outstanding bonds and notes on either of the two buildings, right, that we're talking about?
We have a bond in West River, but it's on Leland and Gray.
Yeah, so I think that makes, I think that's clean,
Yeah.
but we got to confirm legal on that just to make sure. The towns then have to decide if they choose to accept said purchase of $1. If they do, I didn't realize this till I got into the weeds a little bit, but they have to maintain ownership for 5 years and use it for community and public purposes. After the 5 years, the towns can do whatever they want with it. If they sell or they don't use it for 5 years or less, they have to basically reimburse us. And if they choose not to acquire the $1, and there might be a reason why they might not want to take on the
Expenses.
the expenses of the facility repairs that we've laid out, then the district shall sell the property in essence. So, but that becomes the district's responsibility, not the town's, if the town says no thank you. So I don't know the implications of that for a vote, if you do those things simultaneously, or if you have to consult with the town, select boards, how they would choose to query on that part. Maybe it's a step 2, they do them separate times, I don't know. But that would be something for the town to do, not for us. We would only be asking them to close or not to close. The town would separately have to ask townspeople whether or not they want it for $1. So that's the article there. And then I just put up a little bit of a timeline. So we'll have our 3 sessions in September. This board will meet again on the 14th of October. If at that time you vote to proceed with the plan, that is, the plan is to direct the towns to run an election to ask them about closing their schools. It's really your election, but they facilitate it. But you have to warn it 30 to 40 days out. There's election day, so I just said, well, if it was 30, what's the quickest possible turnaround time? If the day after we did that, would be the middle of November. Then there's a 10-day vote for certification, 10 days for vote certification. And so by the end of November, in essence, you have a final decision or an answer. And then you're building your budget in December and adopting it in January, early February. So that's sort of your timeline. I don't know, if it were to pass, that both towns agreed and we were moving forward with this, I don't know the timeline on being able to pull it off for next year by the start of school. We talked about the idea that maybe it's a mid-year thing. If you can't do it by September, maybe it's something you do around the holiday recess in the middle of the school year. I don't know. But it's a tight with permitting and everything for the temporary buildings and pads and the site prep you have to do there. It would take some time. But that lays out a potential timeline. And again, I'm open to, you guys can tell me what to put in this if you want a different timeline. And then this one I started a slide and I kind of didn't know what to do with it. We've talked about this, like Lindsay's question was like, well, what's the alternative? If the people say no, what happens? Well, what happens is it's status quo. We've seen what the estimate will be. We've just heard what our best guess of what a reduction would be needed to get under the cap. And you're gonna have, even with level expenses, you're still gonna have an increase in the tax rate because our ed expenses went down, if you remember the chart earlier, but because of the CLA, the tax rate went up. So even level funding, level cost of educational services, you're still gonna have a potential tax rate increase, particularly if the yield's gonna tank. So that sort of paints the picture. I don't know what you'd wanna put, like, I don't know. We don't want this to be a scare tactic. We don't want to be like trying to scare people, but we also want to be honest, like, this is what the board thinks is the best plan. We've been talking about this for years. This is what we think is best. The threat of what was going to happen to you is real. People have seen their tax bills this year. People were not super excited about those, myself included. I don't even live in this district, but so just trying to think of what should this slide look like was sort of the question, and that was the end. So I'll take that back, I can take some notes. Any thoughts or feedback on any of the slides or any of the flow of it? If you want me to go back through sort of speed, look at it again, I don't know. But we really I think we need more advice on where to go with this, and then I need a wing person. So the board needs to come up with a wing person. So, Mr. Chairman?
I got you.
Where do you want to go?
Please.
Yeah, okay. Can do that. All right, so did folks have any questions about the slides?
I would say after having seen it from this side of the room, there's no way we can present those graphics of the matrix, because it's like hard enough to read the matrix when you're holding the paper in front of you, right? It's a huge amount of information.
Right.
So I don't know how necessarily to make those graphics.
Well, that's what I thought, like
better.
having a cumulative score, maybe we don't have the graphics, maybe we just bullet list the topics that are included and then have the score for that one.
Would you wanna have an accompanying printout? Because we know these slides are hard to read, here's a printout of them that you can look at while the slide is up. So
And it is linked for anybody at home, so they can look there.
They won't have trouble seeing it from home.
Right.
Yeah, this wouldn't be bad on a printout, but trying to see it from 20, 30 feet
You
away.
can't see anything.
Yeah, can't read
And
that.
the other piece is we're gonna be in the 3 elementary schools doing these shows, and so we're gonna probably have something very similar to this as our display. So, now maybe it's not gonna be as awkwardly placed, maybe it's gonna be more for the people in
So
the
hard
audience
to
to see, I don't know, maybe we have 2 of them where we can see one, they can, I don't know, maybe we can talk about that.
Are we gonna be zooming?
The Zoom option will also be open, yeah.
Because if that's the case, then it probably won't be very different than that.
I feel like maybe we could
But we're how we hang it.
include
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
information, but without actually taking like a picture of the graphic. But just, it requires redoing it in a little bit, but we could basically do it in a way that we know we're gonna fill this slide, right? We're gonna make it fit here in a way that's readable. I think that what we just the image inserted in there isn't really worth including because it's impossible to read. It's gonna just result in more questions, I feel like. But I think it's important information.
And again, they link the full, they can click on this,
Right.
oops, and they can open up, the whole thing is here. The projections are all here. And then after the projections are the other reports for all 3 schools. So it's all right there, it's pretty easy to get to. So you guys tell me how you want, I have a little bit, the first meeting is when, next week?
Yep.
It's been a little bit of time to adjust, so I'll want some planning time with Al to kind of go over the speaking parts, but.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways that you can have graphics like that be legible. I mean, like, just looking at that, I can think of
Like, get rid
there's
of
a
all the
lot
white
of, lot of
space.
wasted space in there. that
Stretch
will
it out.
probably-
When we were looking at it before, it was mostly just the slide, and other stuff wasn't there when he was showing us the slide, it was still hard to read.
No, but the white space where it, like between where the blue is
Yeah,
and
Borders,
in between,
This
the,
one,
so like
this one.
all the white space in there, right? You
Yeah.
just eliminate that and then stretch it out. It would require you can't use an
Yeah,
an
I'd have
image
to, I'd have to basically do a table and retype
Right.
it myself and put it in a table,
Right.
is what I have to do.
But that would make it
No,
more
not really.
legible.
Not really, like, I mean, just on that one you just showed right there, that, I mean, look from the words to the, when you finally run into numbers, there's about 5 inches.
Right,
of
on that
Right,
one.
if you just get rid of all the extra space and then
Yeah.
make it fit.
Yeah, it's.
And we
it's-
have those spreadsheets, so it should be easy enough to make a new image.
Yeah, they're all PDFs, so it is hard
Yeah.
to.
But we
import.
have the actual spreadsheet too, don't we?
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe.
Don't we?
You can do, yeah.
So you could re-PDF it with different field sizes?
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if you guys. Maybe they.
Hey, Ellen.
Hey, thanks. I have no idea what you're seeing on the screen. I don't know whether my raised hand is there, but just for the perspective of someone who's looking at this, and there's plenty of others on here, the value of having the graphics, I think, is great. I can read them on my computer screen. I totally understand what the problem is in that room. And I think there's value in redoing those graphics, keeping them, making them a lot more legible in the room. But knowing that it's just in the room where the problem's going to be. Most people see this on a computer screen, frankly. There's a lot of really important information there. I just think they need to be redone to, as you guys have all been talking about.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, I agree. And we can certainly have handouts
Yeah.
there so that people can follow along.
I also, for some reason, care more tonight than I did this morning that there's like a lack of continuity between sometimes showing basically some of that matrix and then sometimes it's just photos.
Right.
I actually think that including the data from that matrix is worth doing.
The difference, the hard part is that some of them have like 15 sub
Right.
points. And some of them are easier to look at, like this one was, like you can see this number's 9 and 10, so I had to actually just clip some of them. This isn't even all of them, but I figured people understand ball fields and playgrounds. So like that seemed like an obvious one to kind of highlight, but I can highlight any of them or none of them. I mean, originally I had a picture of a playground.
Right.
I didn't even have this, because it was just like, well, what's the point? But I tried to, it is a crapshoot.
I think at this point, there's only one or two that have photos, right? Maybe
Yeah, it's
two of them?
The transportation one and this one.
So maybe we can, I don't care whether we delete photos or whether we also have photos, but I think that we should have some sort of data from that, whether it's the whole part of the matrix or just a little chunk,
Okay.
but something that ties in, here's a piece of data that sort of loosely summarizes. I know we also have the cumulative score, but
Right, well, I guess my question is the structure of this with each of the 6 broken out, is that right? Do people want that level of detail? Because we don't even have to do that level of detail if you don't want to. So,
I was just gonna say that I think at the onset, when you start talking about the report itself, I think what you just did when you scrolled through the report, to show the level of detail that there was generally, and then to say, well, we're gonna look at the 6 sections, and just to allow people to really understand that this is an enormous document. I almost wonder if maybe we should just bring, I hate to do it because it's costly and it's disgusting to have that much paper, but if we had hard copies that we could take to each school and say,
the legal ones, you mean the size, the big ones we had in the room?
Yeah, and you could say too, we're gonna take these from you, all of it's available online, but we're gonna take these to each town, just to save some of the, but I wonder if that would be effective, because people really need to know how exhaustive, what a process we went through to land where we're landing, because it's a real stretch when you hear, oh, my school's gonna close, but if you really understood who was in the room and how exhaustive the process was, I think it could be comforting. You know, so I guess my answer to you is, I think that looking at the 6 sections is good, but I think looking at the whole thing as a process and as a document first somehow would really be helpful.
Yeah, even if it is just as part of the presentation saying, we have all these big giant books you're welcome to look at, this was the whole it's a, here's the whole thing, right? Like, ka-thunk. It's a big deal.
Sort of as we were talking about this morning though, I do think, I mean, yes, all these details are great. I do think that we do have facts that are indisputable, that the only site that currently has the plumbing and the other
Expandability.
yes, the only site that we have that could support the amount of students is the Newfane campus. And to increase that for any other campus would be a non-feasible cost. And so, while all of these other details are important to help people understand, those details are the ones that are like, these are indisputable, so everything else is nice, we can talk about those. These are the ones though that say, I'm sorry, these other campuses, they just aren't feasible for this plan.
Agreed. We actually had a slide where we sort of talked about that this morning, but if we didn't, it didn't say like in giant words. What did we call it? Which slide is that?
It's up to,
This one? No.
no.
This guy, Kate Garing said she got bumped and is trying to get back in. Do you see her in the waiting room?
I saw her a minute ago and I let her back in, but I can't see the screen that way right now.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm in again, thank you.
Oh, perfect.
that's what you.
It was the one with the very small graph with only 3 points.
Oh yeah, which is feasible. Yeah, this one right
This
here.
Yeah, change the language to write which site is feasible to house all pre-K to 5.
We talked about adding a little blurb about Townsend does not have land, right? There's no feasible land to expand at Townsend, and how the most significant problem with Jamaica site was the current infrastructure, wastewater, et cetera. And that those things are like, that's it, there's nothing you can do, right? Here we
Also,
are.
once you list those specifically, it's like,
We wish desperately that it was different, right? I think that we need to make it very clear that this was not, like us trying to impose any sort of scenario, any sort of solution onto the problem we are facing. This was really like a very data-driven, there's only one solution here.
Right, very objective and like Bob said earlier, clinical. You know, this is clinical. This is not us wearing our emotions and trying to solve it that way. It's really looking at every angle.
and the hard part about that is that the decision for people is not clinical, it's emotional. For good reason. And so what Peter's described is like you're taking away that clinical elements that, and you just kind of like, here it is, there's no choice. And my worry is that because of the level of emotion people have about it, that could backfire if you want to see this to success. Because I think they might be like, you're just cramming this at us. But if you can slowly march them through the clinical element of it, that maybe you can win them over despite the emotion. I don't know. But
Emily has.
Oh, Emily, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I wasn't
Sorry.
sure whether you could see my hand or not.
Go ahead.
I just have a couple of things to share. One is that I think that these slides, I don't have any big issue with any of the slides. I think it's important to have all this information there available. The less slides are always better. The easier to see the slides, that's always better too. But I actually trust the administration and the folks who've been working on this, Leslie and Peter, and then you, sorry, Al, to actually come up with a slide deck that works without us micromanaging all the little details, because I think you already are getting enough feedback and you know where the improvements need to be made. But there's a couple of things I wanted to ask about. One of them, and I could have missed it, but I didn't see a slide that talked about the educational benefits of consolidating. I did see okay, let me just look at that again. So I want to make sure that we're really highlighting this slide to make sure that folks recognize and understand the background educationally why we're doing this. We spend an awful lot of time on facilities, buildings, and what's the appropriate, what's the optimal size for an elementary school or for a primary school. But I think this slide we need to emphasize, and the educators in the room need to emphasize it. The board needs to emphasize it. That takes me to another piece of feedback. Just bear with me. I got a few things that I wanted to say. One is this is not coming from the administration. This is not coming from the staff. This is coming from the school board, and the school board needs to take the lead on this. And I've had tons of experience with us going through a process for consolidation, a process for adding on to schools and all of that. And the board needs to take responsibility for it. We're the ones who are making the recommendations. So I just want to highlight that. The excess spending threshold slides, I think that should go. I don't think the ones that you were questioning, Heidi was mentioning, and I don't think that's helpful. It's just too much variable. But I do think it's really important for us to explain the way the excess spending threshold will impact us. So there's a way to do that without having any dollars and graphics and numbers that are so, they're just too variable for us to really put a face on. So I think that that's super important to mention it, but not use that slide.
Sure, I can do that.
And then the last, I don't want to minimize the excess spending because I think it's big and we all know what's coming down the road, or we all know something's coming down the road, and the excess spending threshold that is coming is the first step to share with us what's coming down the road. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was there was a slide about the timeline and the 30 to 40 days and all of that. And there's a mention of 10 days for vote certification. It doesn't mention in there for 10 days for the vote certification. Doesn't mention in there for the 30 days that I believe we have to allow for reconsideration. And I just want to make sure that we're thinking about that, because I don't think we can, the board, maybe it's 10 days for reconsideration.
No, 30
for the petition.
But I do think that there is a timeline. We need to confirm what that is for a community to petition to reconsider a vote that they're not happy with. And that might change the timeline, because this is a very tight timeline. Not saying we shouldn't do it, but I want to make sure that we've got everything built into it. And the only last thing I crossed off as a list of things that I wanted to mention, but I'm going to mention it anyway. We are people who have seen proposals like this in our district for many years, have seen tables that show numbers that are on a $100,000 home. And what we've done in these slides, Heidi and Lori, I assume too, have said that it's on $100,000 value, so people can multiply it. But I started to think, well, maybe we ought to, because nobody has a $100,000 home. And I understand why using the number of value there for every 100,000 your home is valued at, this is what it costs. But sometimes it's helpful to have a graph on a $200,000 home or a $300,000 home. So I just wanted to throw that out there for a thought. That's a small piece. And I think that was all I had right at the moment. Thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you, Emily. Those are great comments. On the educational benefits, totally agree. Super important. Should that be moved further up into the slide so we hit that right away?
We could put that before the financial.
You talking about the educational thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that maybe we put that before we get into the elements, and that maybe we actually put that up front when we're talking about why.
Yeah.
So we have the enrollment was one factor, but the other factor is the educational benefits. We just slide it in right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
You might want to, sorry to interject, but you might want to revisit it at the end.
Sure, bring it back up.
And
That's
then,
really smart.
and then
Same
add
slide.
to the
remind you.
educational benefit, the financial benefit,
Right, have a-
right? So that it sort of puts it all on one page.
And I was thinking about that slide too. I think that I have traditionally been able, I think it's fair to say that I've been traditionally able to hire in a more, I think I've been able to hire easier because of my proximity to Brattleboro and Keene and Greenfield, and that might be something that you might want to put in the slide as well. I think that that's true. I'm not sure if it is, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, yes, I mean, Wyndham couldn't hire, Jamaica couldn't hire,
Yeah.
Warrisboro has struggled with hiring.
Yeah.
It's the rural, out of the way places that are struggling the
People
most.
that graduate from Keene State and are ready to teach, they can keep their apartment.
Yeah.
And they've got a long commute, but.
And another thing that we have talked about quite a bit is that, you know, we assume savings here based on, right, we don't know what the future really holds, we don't know what is going to be imposed on us and we don't know any of these things, right? But we can assume some savings, but even if we didn't save $1 doing this, we would still be providing a better education for our kids, and that's what we're here to do. And I think it's important to say that yes, we hope to save money, dear God, we hope to save some money. But even if we didn't, we would still be providing a better educational, social, emotional, everything, every opportunity for our kids would be increased. And if we could do it, why shouldn't we, right? If we can make it better for our kids, shouldn't we be doing that? So I don't know how we say that, whether we just say that or whether we,
You just said it, Lindsay.
well, whatever, like whether it's a slide or, like it is our job to
She
do
did
the best we can do.
Lindsay said. No, that's great. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I just wondered if this information Lori helped me put together as we were doing some comparisons, and I'm wondering if you want a slide that actually compares the tax rate in 2020 to the tax rate in 2025, because for instance, Jamaica has gone up 23.52% in 5 years.
Oh my goodness.
Brookline 22.28%, Newfane 12.88. I feel like that's a significant number to look at for 5 years, knowing that the potential to go up significantly higher in the next couple of years is there. So
There is a significant trend here.
Well, in the trend itself on how fast
right,
it's
so
going up
I'm looking for
exponentially.
direction as to whether you want that included in the financials.
Well, I'm wondering if that goes after the whys.
I actually
Like
feel like
at the
that's more
end?
important to look at than the butts and
Population
chairs.
timeline.
Yeah,
Then the what?
butts and chairs, population. Sorry.
But if we put it towards the end, like, and to sum up, this is what your taxes have done in the last 5 years. This is the direction they're going in.
And if you went to extrapolate there, you would say, well, Newfane's didn't go up as much. And one of the stories that I think needs to be told is what happened with Brookline and Newfane Elementary. Because that story is exactly this. It's the expansion of the community. It's being willing to see that the border between two towns isn't the real thing, right? And it's that all the kids needed to get the benefit of one another. I think that that's an important story. And a lot of the people that are voting have already gone through this. Or actually, they're not voting.
Right, they would not be voting.
But their taxes haven't gone through the roof because two towns, well.
Brookline's is on the high end there, that may not be the best example.
All right, and maybe not.
I was gonna say Brookline and Newbrook wouldn't be vote, or Newbrook would not be voting on this. It's easier to say Newbrook.
So, I'm looking for feedback on the slideshow specifically.
Yeah.
Or either the way the story's being told, the
So,
order of things, graphics.
I'm happy, like personally, I think that everyone has an idea of what the population trend has been. It's a conversation that we've had quite a bit. And the fact that we know that it is sort of leveling out, it's not that it's not still a huge impact on it, but it's less of the story of it. And that the actual trend of rising costs and rising taxes is more impactful than that slide. I would actually trade them.
But the numbers still go down, right? I mean, It's just, I think that that's important to note. We're not looking at leveling out or slightly rising. We're still looking in that slide, that 10-year slide, where enrollments are going down. Not huge amounts, but they are.
Rate
And that
has slowed.
concerns me.
It's a good visual, and I don't think we need to pause on it very long, but it's just,
Yeah, we're gonna hammer it, but
yeah.
we can acknowledge it.
Definitely.
It's great, yeah.
So Alan, maybe the next step is I'll reach out to you, schedule some times, and
Yep, absolutely.
I will stop sharing.
And Emily, you're absolutely right. This is ours, we own it, but thank God we have an administration that has incredible resources and ability to pull all of this together in a cohesive way, so.
And also, like, we as a board own this, but I think it's worth, and like, feel free to disagree with me, any of the administration, but it's good to know that we seem to have the administration on board. We're not going against their recommendations by any means, right? Everyone's on the same page.
Great point.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I'm not totally right, Lindsay, and we need to acknowledge that. Everything you just said, Al, is absolutely true. But we're the ones who are presenting this. I don't want the administration to be in the seat of that. That's the only reason I brought it up, because it really is us presenting it to the voters.
Thanks, Emily.
Good, Drew.
Drew, did I see your hand? Yep.
Yeah, so if I remember right, one of the things that we talked about is in order to come up with the funding, in order to put this plan into place, we would have to take a bond of some sort. Because I think it's important that the voters in Newfane and Brookline actually get some say as to what's going on here too. If we're going to spend a large sum of money, either buying, renovating, renting, whatever it is, trailers, then I don't want to leave them out. I don't want it to seem like this is a decision that's being made only by Jamaica and Townsend. So my understanding is that even if the two towns voted to close the school, there would be another vote of the entire district to appropriate the money. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't, it's not a bond, I don't think, right?
No,
We were
no.
talking about some,
When Lori presented it last meeting, she pointed out that you have money in the bank, surplus, that could be used to pay this out of capital funds so that you wouldn't have to take out a bond if you did it in the next year. If you chose to use some of that capital, the surplus money you've had in the bank, you could buy down the tax rate and push this off a year or two, but then that money would last you about 3 years, depending on how much to buy under the threshold, and you would have to take out a bond at that point in time. So you do have the money to cover the expenses in the bank right now for next year, if that's what was decided.
That should be a
Thanks,
slide.
Amy.
That should be a slide.
Yeah.
That's part of the
That's a great point.
presentation Lori gave.
But to
Talking
Drew's
about, here are the two
point,
ways you can do this.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
exists.
so that makes me think, so part of it is, a couple things made me think about the idea, like, they know the plan of moving there, but they don't, we've never in the presentation talked about modulars, right? Drew referred to them as trailers, and I understand why he said that, because I think historically that's kind of what they look like. They're very different now. Marlboro has some, I've been in it recently. It's not something you want forever, but they're not like the trailers of yore that used to be in Newbrook years ago. So maybe some pictures of what they would look like and that financial information about how they would be paid for, potentially even where they'd be located. I mean,
The site plan.
Stevens had a site plan that showed where you would slap it down to what it would look like, so people could actually visualize that. So maybe some of those images need to be, now, as Emily said, keep the slideshow short, but now we're getting up over 30 at this point. So just to,
Yeah.
anyways, but I think it's a good idea that we want to make sure people understand what it is that they're buying into,
Yeah.
what it looks like, and where it will be laid out, and then how it's being paid for.
Because somebody will ask that question.
Yeah, and they're not
That's a great
trailers
point.
in that sense, like the old ones. They're not the old, construction trailers. Say it, they're not bad. They're kind of nice. Like they're brand new. you know, and if you get the ones that we talked about with bathrooms there, like, you know, it's,
I think it's also good to note, if we're gonna do that, that any bonds that we now may enter into or the future, at least with current legislation, is gonna add to that excess spending threshold, which it wasn't in the past. So that's another point that might be worth making on this slide.
That'd be a very good.
Yeah, that's a big point.
So just to Drew's point though about, you know, Townsend is having Towns residents get a very, very specific voice and vote in this, and Jamaica residents get a very, very specific vote and voice in this, but Newfane and Brookline students or families aren't voting on a thing. So how are we giving them a voice in what's happening to their kids? Because it certainly affects these families as well. It affects their taxes, it affects their kids, you know, like, how do we allow them to have that same voice that everybody else gets? I don't have an answer, I'm actually wondering if you all do.
Yeah.
I mean, Lindsay, you are their voice.
Yeah.
You're the elected official that represent, one of the elected people that represent those people. You know, you are their voice. If they really want, we're gonna have a meeting there, they're gonna talk to us about that, they can reach out to their official. I mean, part of the whole job of a school board, and I believe it's part of the statute that says the board does not give up its authority to govern to public vote. We can't just go say, hey, Newfane, how do you feel about this? Because we'd like to. You know, there's not a way to give them a vote in this. You really are their vote.
It just feels.
We do, I will say that we are having a meeting there. We are having a meeting at the Newfane campus to be able to ascertain any opinions that people might bring to that or any viewpoints. And I think that's really important. So I think that may be what we can do to get those Newfane and Brookline residents.
What happens if you have a split vote? One town votes to close the school and the other town votes not to?
Very great question. I would say we don't do it.
Well, then
Keep
one
it
town
status
brings a
quo.
petition to close that school again, and we revote it, I don't know. Cross that bridge when we come to it,
Yeah.
probably, I mean, when we consolidated this, you know, when we became a consolidated education district, it was like, if these towns vote yes, then it happens, and this town can do either what it wants to, and if some towns didn't vote, it didn't happen, and probably we'd be in that same boat, honestly, you know, if one voted yes and one voted no, it's like, well, we can't do it. So now we're stuck with this, now we're gonna continue the status quo. And there you
Or
have
we
it.
could say, okay, well, we know that we have to continue to run educational services in that building because the town does not want to close it. And we as a board could say, and maybe we do and maybe we don't, but then the board could say, okay, well, these are the educational services we choose to run in that building. And this is the path that we, as a board, choose to move forward with in order to provide the best educational opportunities for our students at the least cost available.
Fair enough.
I think I'd rather discuss it when it really happens.
Yeah.
Because
Agreed.
that sounds like, you know, the velvet fist.
Agreed. I'm not saying that we,
Where's the velvet?
Yeah, there's no velvet there.
Might just be a fist, yeah.
yes.
All right, fine, chainmail. It's the hammer of Thor.
Yep.
All right, so we good on that? So you and I will talk and
Look forward to our collaboration.
Fantastic, yes. Lindsay, or Peter, did you want to have any part of the presentation, or if?
I mean, I will be there and I'm happy to like say a piece, but I would love if you would be the presenter.
Yep.
We
No
have,
problem.
one thing that we actually had talked about this morning was that each of the town's representatives, when we are in said town, should probably at some point speak up
Yes.
as the elected officials from that town.
It could even be like a, you know, in Jamaica, one of the Jamaica reps is also a part of this presentation, right? Whatever part that is, right? More than just sitting there.
Okay, yeah.
Do we have to vote on the schedule? I know you talked about the schedule for, we're having the meetings and the vote. When do we vote on that? Do we have to vote on that to schedule those different, the vote?
Yes.
So,
The date for the vote, the date for, you know, the 30 days after, and then like, when does that happen? I'm just curious.
Well, I think we need to hear from the folks.
So we're gonna do that, and then at our next meeting, okay.
Pending what we, like, I actually wanna hear what everybody has to say about it. Maybe someone's gonna have something that they're gonna come to us at one of these meetings and say, what about this? You didn't consider this, and I'm gonna go, oh. Like, that could very well happen, and I don't wanna make any decisions without having first had the conversation with everybody.
Well, the timeline was, you know, have the community meetings,
Yep.
and then October 12th, 14th, whatever it was that's when we vote to go forward or not.
Be digesting the 3 meetings and figuring out what you're gonna do, if anything.
All right, I think we're good there. Go on to,
Item number 2.
Yeah, item number 2 there. We're moving fast
It's supposed to be
now.
like 8 o'clock now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. NEASC update.
So that's a quick one, just the visit of the visiting committee, the collaborative conference will be happening before your next meeting. So just wanted to let you guys know this is happening. Remember, we've set this in motion. I think it came out of the secondary task force, maybe, for long-term planning. It's actually finally happening now. They're coming, there's been a lot of pre-work. The staff has of all 4 buildings, has voted to accept the report. We have a report. They're coming, we're putting up people in hotels and giving them meals, and they're coming to spend 2 days with us, and then they'll share their wisdom with us based on our report. And so that's coming up. So we just want you guys to be aware that you don't have any obligation around it. Just want you to know it's happening soon.
All right, thanks. PCB update. Greg's not there. Yep.
Yeah, so Greg's still here, so I'll start this and you can get into the weeds a little bit. So one of the things that we talked about that's been on the side is, we talked about this in the last board meeting, was that there's been a pause in the PCB testing program at the state. And we were able to get reimbursement, the system for reimbursement back on the testing, the initial testing, and the remediation of it is another story, but we'll get there.
We expect to get reimbursement.
We expect to get reimbursement,
Yes.
but it's been processed now by the
Yes,
state.
we've
So that's-
submitted it and the state has said we should get paid.
Angry email made some action. One of the things the angry email also spurred was a conversation around what do we do with Newbrook? Because Newbrook is on the list to be tested, but is yet to be tested. And if we're going to talk about all this, how do we get there? And so I ended up in a meeting with the Director of Operations of the AOE and one of the, I'm not sure what his title was, from Department of Environmental Conservation, is that what's called? DEC. And really talked about, like, how do we want to go about this? And got some advice from them on how we should proceed. Greg took the advice, and I'll let him carry on from here, but he took it to one of the consultants, Fuss O'Neill, who's done a lot of the testing across the state, not just for us, but in many other places. And in fact, DEC strongly recommends them as one of the consultants. And Greg met with them and shared the advice he received from the agency and from the DEC. And I'll let Greg cue you up. Greg, tell us what he said.
All right, so yeah, I spoke with Rob Montgomery last week, who's filling in for Josh Robinson. So yeah, he didn't. So they recommended doing what's called a HERA level testing, which so if you had a section of your room, you would do like say you had a whole set of windows, you would do 3 sets of testing, right? You do one window here, one window there, one window there, and say, okay, that's good for all the windows. Whereas the current testing by DEC, after they find it in the air, they would take 3 samples of each classroom set of windows of their caulk, and then each one. So if we do the testing ourselves, we should do it at the level in which DEC is going to do it. Rob thought it was similar to a pizza guy from New York City giving someone farming advice in Vermont, was the term he used. He just was like, it doesn't seem like great advice to have you guys do that and then put all your eggs in this basket. He said, and if you test at the level DEC tests, then you ought to just do the air testing because that's what they're going to do. So DEC can only regulate air. And so once they find something in the air, then they can push for further testing. EPA can only control how you dispose of it. So then the EPA drives, like asbestos materials, what you have to do with it once you take it out and how you have to take it out. So he said, so the reality is for the money, you'd be way better off just doing, in the way I was reading it, was that we'd be better off doing the air testing. So I reached out to him. He was going to come down and do a site survey for us, which basically they go through all the rooms, they look at all the like materials, building materials, brick, concrete, ceilings, right? And then we tell them, you know, this was the main building, this was the addition, what year the addition was, and then they would sample, you know, they would create a sample circuit, they would bring down the air samplers, it would run for 24 hours, and then they would give us a report based on that. And he will also give us a quote based on doing DEC level material sampling, and a Harris sampling after he does that. So that I'm hoping to have something from him by the end of the week.
So the short version of this, because Greg's great with long reports. The short version is the state told us, in essence, they wouldn't put us on the list to be reimbursed for testing. That they recommended we take this other path, which was, as Greg just described, not as good, according to the people that they were telling us to go to get that path accomplished. So, in the end, what we're asking tonight is for you guys to authorize the testing of the Newbrook building the right way, an unknown cost to us yet, but we'll get that information soon, knowing that there's a 95% chance the state's not going to give us that money back like they did with the other buildings. But still, I think it's still the right thing to do before we go, you know, too deep here. So that's, in essence, we need you guys to give us a little green light on that so we can get that scheduled.
Okay.
Do you have like a cap?
I don't think there's any cap on the expense, right?
Yeah, I mean, Greg could probably give us a ballpark.
Well, the tough thing is when our other schools were done, when the air sampling was done at our other schools, it was just done between Fuss and O'Neill and the state. So I don't know how much that was. I do know that at Leland and Gray, we've spent, Heidi, with $37,000 in sampling at Leland and Gray on the second round.
I think that's what it is.
57 at Dover, and I think a total of about 60-ish in Marlboro. Right, there was like a 21 and a 36, something like that, or was it 27 and 30?
I think there's like 51,000 we've paid out of Marlboro already. So
okay, yeah. Now, granted, those were second round of samplings, and the high numbers in Dover and Marlboro were also because they had to do some special asbestos remediation before we could do those rounds of sampling. So I mean, I would guess we're in the 30 grand range if I had to throw something out there that would be that I think would be within 5,000 to 7,000 one way or another.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Emily?
Yeah, Greg, you could probably answer this question. Am I right that we don't actually need to test the whole school because of the age of the building, pieces of the building? Like the multipurpose room, I think doesn't need to be tested, and the addition where the library and offices are wouldn't need to be either. Am I right?
Correct. It would probably end up being just the original parts of the building because the addition was after 75 or whatever. I think it was 75.
Yep. So that reduces the actual square footage of where we need to test, which would be lower than most of the other schools because of the additions that we've put on since then. So
yeah,
I don't see how we have any choice but to do this, but I'm really ticked off that we're doing all the right things and we can't get confirmation on repayment, and I'm not going to let that one go. I don't know whether we'll get it or not, but I think we have to do this if we're going to move forward with this plan.
Agreed.
I was just thinking too, actually, the same thing happened in Wardsboro. They only had to sample a very small section of their building. I think it was about 4 or 5 rooms. So I could probably reach out to them and just say, hey, how much did the Wardsboro air sampling cost too? And I could send you all an email to give you an idea of at least, what that cost to have the air sampling done, to give you a better idea of a ballpark.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks. All right, I'll entertain a motion. What would we like to say in the motion to approve the expenditures for?
It's unbudgeted, so to include expenditures, I mean, you wanna have a cap of,
60.
sure, it's not gonna be that much, but yeah, you could say that a
Yeah,
cap of
sure.
60 for indoor air quality testing at the Newbrook School.
Okay, it's just indoor air quality or?
They're also drilling and taking samples, I believe, if the air
Right,
quality.
so stage 2 is if they find some in the air, then they start to collect more samples, yeah. And that's where the expense does build up a little bit.
All right.
So we're,
Does IAQ cover it or?
are we approving just the air quality, or are we approving if they find something? What are we approving?
I think we're just approving initial air testing for PCBs.
Yeah.
Basically, we're doing what would be the first round of the DEC testing. And as long as we come back clear, we're good to go.
All right, I'll entertain that motion.
Who's got those words?
Greg, who did Wardsboro?
Fuss and O'Neill.
It was? Okay.
Yep, they've done all of ours.
All right.
So I would make a motion to approve expenditures for initial air quality testing at Newbrook. 4 PCBs with a cap of $60,000.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed $60,000. Is that the right?
I'll second
Sounds
that.
good.
That's a brilliant motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. I'll start with the folks in Zoom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And a thumbs up. All right. Those in the room, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, solar bankruptcy update.
So I received a thick order from the bankruptcy court saying that it's done, which was the fastest bankruptcy I've ever seen. And after talking to our attorney, good news is that the new purchaser will continue on with the contract. We've already gotten an invoice for all the bills what we didn't pay while this was in bankruptcy court. We won't ever be paid for last year because that didn't happen, and the transaction is free of the debt that they held with us and all their other debtors. So starting right away, we're gonna start paying iSun back. Their name changed slightly, like went from like iSun Inc. or iSun LLC to. But according to the attorney, we should be getting our annual lease payment, and we'll continue to get our credits that we pay for on the electric bill. So we're hoping that all goes smoothly and like expected.
That's great news. Oh my gosh. All right, is that it? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda, entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 12th, 2024. Peter, thank you.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in Zoom land in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor out here?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Correspondence, anything that we wanted
It
to?
was just the JAMBA correspondence is the only thing I saw.
Okay. Two. Great. All right, financials.
Go for it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. It's my turn anyways. Pay order number 10 for $8,000. Pay order 11 for $269,328.64. Pay order number 12 for $266.78. Pay order 14 for $9,832.14. And pay order 15 for $452,548.16.
Have a second.
Yes, you do.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Just notice we still lucky pay order.
Seeing and hearing none?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, folks.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're moving. Yeah, principal reports. All right, we'll go down the line here. Dana.
Sure. Leland Gray, academic proficiency, our middle school they have their benchmark testing underway. We have a internal group that's going to be looking at our schedule, and I have the bullet points there for what they're going to be exploring. We are trying to find a common meeting time. It's a small group, about 6-7 people, but it looks like actually 7 in the morning might be our meeting time. Under personalized learning, I can say this and it's gonna be like, big deal, but it actually is a really big deal. The personalized learning committee and the advisory committee have been they've begun working not only with the students, but with the staff, but the really interesting thing is they've started coordinating their efforts without any prompting. So I just want to put it out there that the teachers are really working well and putting an organized effort into shifting practice around advisory and personalized learning portfolio, but also developing it something that's meaningful for everybody involved. It's awesome work. Under high quality staffing, it just would repeat. The beginning of the year, we did not have, if you will, a paid presenter coming in and organizing, but we had organized tasks that our committees wanted to work on, and I'm really proud of the staff. They worked, and they produced documents and itineraries and schedules and supporting documents, so that was great to see. Safe, healthy schools. Back to school night. I apologize about the little short notice on that, but the staff actually showed up. I shouldn't say it that way, but they really had short notice and they showed up, which was awesome. We had a ton of families show up, and we had PAC surveys available, and I think we got over 50 responses, which is kind of a record for parental feedback since I've been here. So that's good. Thinking like a normal PAC meeting would be 4 people, we've got like 50 people giving us input, and we're gonna continue to try to work on like what's the format and how to get more people involved. And I think we're gonna take on our parent communication on Friday notes first, like when should that come out? What do people want from us? And see if we can engage people a little bit more in that way.
That's good.
I know, you're not wrong. It does work. Advisories are underway, and they're going well. Our safety team has met actually a couple times to review and make sure our wording on our guiding documents are accurate. We're gonna have drills this week. And then we also have met with our behavior threat assessment team to review our process, and we're going to be meeting monthly for that also. So I feel like we're in good shape with that. Financial efficiencies, just we're on point, but we're talking about what data do we have to best support student learning. It's been a really good, solid start to the school year in general. So it's been good. That's my report.
Thanks, Dan. Yes.
Sorry, I know we're trying to move along. I'm excited to hear that you have a group that's working on scheduling and analyzing scheduling issues. I would love to hear more about that. I'm excited to hear about more what that's gonna look like.
Yeah.
And if it's, I mean, there probably isn't one to this point, but if at some point they develop a bigger time frame of we would like to have an answer and a solution and a consensus, I guess would be the word, by X date, I would just love to know how we're gonna move towards some better consensus.
I would expect for students to be involved and parents.
Perfect. Looking
But
forward to it.
I mean, we need to get organized around. Wait, when are we meeting first? So I mean, we're there, but I do think if this carries forward like our other committees that were established last year, I think it's going to be pretty cool. But the challenge always is, and Bob's repeatedly told us, and I absolutely feel it, understand it. Like, we have resources. Like, that's everything in life, right? You have so many resources, but what are you going to do with them, and what's the purpose, and how to best? So, but we're going to explore it and see. I mean, but at least we'll have a thorough process and document to show where we end up.
I have
yeah,
a separate
go ahead.
question.
Sure.
It wasn't really addressed in here, but you'd mentioned
Sure.
it a couple times before, Dana, so I was
Yeah.
just wondering if I could get maybe an update or where it's at. You'd mentioned at the end of last year, and then again just a couple meetings ago, the climate surveys you did with the students,
Sure.
where they're just showing that they're in general not
Not
happy.
happy? Yep.
Is anything being done to help and address that in any way the school can? Or I mean,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the school that's causing the unhappiness, but.
Well, I think it's complicated. So to your point, there are 3 words, like when we work with John Kiddo, when we work with Up for Learning, the advisory committee, and the 3 words would be communication, friendships, and happiness. And so it seems like those 3 things are really interrelated. So like, I would even say like, being comfortable talking with adults. Like, I want students talking with their teachers, like, we're here to work for you, but that doesn't always happen. It's like, why not? But the cell phone, there's a lot of data around there. It doesn't lead to happiness, you know, and in getting kids to understand that, but also advisory is working on, and I think the PLP is gonna be powerful in this, like, who do you see yourself as? What do you want to do in your future? It's why we're here, helping you to learn and build the skill sets that you want for your future. And it's not uncommon, and it's fair. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I changed every year. I'm gonna be a chef, I'm gonna be a pharmacist, I wanna be a sage. And you know, it's like, good, keep thinking about it and process through that. But there are, come on, don't look at me like that. But anyway, there are students who have definite ideas already, which is great, and there are some that have no idea, but taking that journey and kind of feeling like you have a place at school, that people are supporting you, I think can impact your happiness. You know, graduating from high school can be scary when you don't know exactly where you're going and what you're doing, and we can't forget that. But and I think friendships too, it's like, how do you treat friends? What do you want from friends? Like, how do we get clarity around that? Like, I think that's one of the still impacts from the time during COVID. It's like, what does it mean to be a friend? And just having time to figure it out. So those 3 words are kind of a triangle of terms that we keep using. It's being addressed in a number of ways, but I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thanks. Randy.
All right.
Our veteran.
Yeah, my second meeting after all. And the good news is that there are children now at Townsend Elementary School, which is really fantastic. It makes, you know, coming to work really worthwhile. And so I've been, you know, just spending the first week and a half of school getting to know the routines and procedures that have been in place at the school, the traditions that have been placed at the school, and really getting into classrooms and getting to know kids. I think, you know, K to 5, I'm gonna say I probably have 95% of their names right now. They're getting to trick me now, so it's getting a little confusing because they'll quiz me, and I know I have it right, but then they'll tell me that I have it wrong just because they think it's funny. But and that just confuses me. So that accounts for that 5% that maybe I'm a little shaky on. But it's been a great start to the year, and really seeing the excitement and the joy that comes through the doors, and really to see the interaction between the staff, who I praised the last time that I was talking to you. To see the love and the affection between the kids and the staff, and the way that the staff cares for the kids, and how the kids care for one another. It's really been great to see. So the report that you have in front of you, I'll just highlight a couple of things. The teachers have started implementing the EL education curriculum, which I'm sure Scotty will probably also talk about, and Dana as well. And so it's been exciting to see how that's rolling out. It's vast, as I would sort of say. It might be a good word to use to describe it right now, right? But really rich and really promising. So we're excited to see how that goes. I didn't mention here, but yeah, benchmarking has already begun this week as well. Under personalized learning, I mentioned our ribbon cutting ceremony on the first day of school. And a ribbon cutting ceremony doesn't really seem to fit into personalized learning, but the backstory to why there was a ribbon cutting does. So, I'd encourage you to just read a little bit more about the details there. But it was a great way to sort of kick off the first day of school with a celebration for that new playground equipment that you all were involved in that process last year. And then, 2 of the middle school students who were able to come over, who were really instrumental working with Chris Jers and Mr. Frost and Mrs. Merluzzi to sort of bring that to fruition. And then we also, under personalized learning, I just included some information about some enriching trips that kids are going to be going on to give you an idea about how that rounds out their learning experience. And I think the other thing to highlight is just that under Safe and Healthy Schools, we conducted our first fire drill last Friday, and the bus drills were conducted as well. So we are keeping an eye on safety and academics and fun. Take it away.
All right. I'm going to try to focus on some different things my colleagues did, and I'm going to go really fast. This summer we had a lot of trainings that happened, especially for our new teachers that were coming in, and I think that and that was because of the strengths of our central office. A lot of them happened at Newbrook because we have mini splits there and it's a little bit cooler in the building. But I just want to say thanks to the central office for preparing our new hires because they've really hit the ground running. I want to thank Mike Krikorian, who is one of our academic support teachers. He recreated our master schedule, the actual document, in order to have a page for each of our grade levels, allowing, let's say, if we're trying to schedule something, we can actually see in actuality when farm to school is happening for grade 3. Like, the level of detail is really great, and that was all by his own doing. He said that he had worked for somebody who had created a master schedule like that, and I encouraged him to show me what he was talking about, and he did the whole thing. That's amazing. I think Dana, I think you and I could speak together on this if you want. But we had two classroom teachers this year that won the 2024 UVM Outstanding Educators Award. And one was from the high school and one was from the elementary level. And we just want to say congratulations to Ashley Matson and Shelley Bostrom, who are truly amazing, hardworking people that keep the kids right in the forefront. I could go on about Shelley. I'm sure you could go on about Ashley. I am so proud of us to have 2 of them in our district. I don't know if you saw the picture of the bear at the dumpster, but Patrick Mace is a very patient man, and we've had a lot of problems with that. Today we had 2 things happen. We brought all the kids to the lunchroom for a cafeteria style lunch for the first time since COVID. And we really love our new practice meeting in the classroom with our kids, but there was talk about, well, what happens when they go to the food court at the mall? And we should be preparing kids for that and for the high school. So we're gonna be doing Mondays in the cafeteria, just like we used to. And that's the day when Taggart Phillips, our PE teacher, doesn't teach, so we don't have like this crunch to get it all cleaned up before for afternoon, so it works great. We also started our Mindful Minute this morning, which is a school-wide thing. I actually come on the PA and talk the children through a mindfulness activity. We're gonna shorten it a little bit for tomorrow. We've done some editing because it was a little bit longer than a minute today. It was a mindful 2 minutes. I want to thank Jake Galogli, who got us a brand new self-service milk cooler. We're going to be serving local organic milk in our cafeteria, which is a very big deal. I'm very excited about it. He wrote a grant and got that thing. Finally, the impact of EL education is really, really obvious. And the way it's obvious is if you walk into a classroom, they're talking about themes. For instance, I walked into a Miss Van Pamela's classroom and they were talking about rights. And I walked into another classroom and they were talking, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say another. I walked into first grade and they were talking about tools. And those are the themes that come out of this first module for EL education. I am so pleased with what is happening. Every teacher is on board. All the children are learning in connected ways about the things that, the skills that they need to get, but connected with thematic content and with storybooks. And I just want to say thank you to Jen McCusick for recognizing this as an opportunity we could take at this moment with the money we had. And that's all I have in my report. Yes. Thank you.
It was under 5.
Thanks, guys.
Under 5?
Under 5.
Mindful minute. All right. So I'm just gonna highlight a couple quick things. And one of the things that we started doing in my first year last year was recognizing service of staff. And so I have it in here. You can see the names, but all of these people actually are in West River or the SU placed in the West River. So that's kind of cool. But so if you just check out the names, these are folks that you employ either through the SU or through West River to do work, and every single one of them is connected to our district here, which is kind of neat. This is for completed years of service, but we did give an honorable mention to Joyce as she enters her 50th year with us, 50, after coming from 4 or so years somewhere else. It's like, yeah, she's been teaching longer than I've been alive.
She started teaching in 71.
It's close though, Bob.
Yeah, same year I was born, so it's close. So yeah, to be starting year 50 with us is pretty incredible. So I just want to publicize that, and we'll do something big for her next fall. And I want to echo what he said about the work that Jen did to roll out of EL. It was very engaging to see the teachers in that training and to see them now implementing it in the classroom is very cool. I mentioned the principal evaluation system, which is new, and our leadership retreat, which we had, which was very good, very strong trainings we had there, including one, for those of you that are Ted Lasso fans, from the VPA called Lasso Lessons in Leadership, which used elements from the show to highlight lessons in leadership. So if you haven't seen the show, check it out, but it was pretty good, very high scores from the team here who experienced it. So. And then I'm at VSA, all members meeting on Thursday. There's going to be a lot of conversation about budget and legislative stuff. And so I'll be report out what I hear there. And I think I forwarded some information to the boards from the AOE regarding some changes happening there. Don't know what that means, but there's some changes happening there. And yeah, so later in the agenda we have the letter, the collaborative budgeting letter, which was followed up by the governor's letter today. So you've seen those as well. So yeah, a lot going on as we start the school year and we're ready for some fun budgeting. So
fun and budgeting in that same sense.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Negotiations committee appointment.
So yeah, so you are up for the, you're in your last year with your teachers, the CBA. They have already sent a document requesting to start the process, so we need you guys to appoint a committee or a person, or however, this is new to me, so however you guys have done that in the past, and they can start talking about the rules of the road with the CBA. So
I believe we've had
It's
that.
been Dana and I.
Yeah. We'll continue on.
I'm willing to do it again,
Yeah.
All right.
but I'm also willing to step aside if someone's eager.
Yeah. Somebody wants to jump in, I can, but yeah, I'm up.
All right.
You get under the table.
Hiding over there. All right. So a motion to.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll move to have Dana and Joe be the leads on negotiations for the WCEA and school board.
Thank you, Emily. Do
I will
have a
second that.
Lindsay, all right. Any discussion?
Thank you.
That's your discussion, all right.
Thank you.
Is it possible for board members who do not want to lead that at all to, I'm just curious in the process of it, but as someone who has never gone through anything like that,
To be involved in that.
just,
Sitting.
yes.
Kind of apprenticing or, a little bit, Joe.
I don't see any reason why not. I mean, the process, usually there's a spokesperson for each side, and that's the only person who actually does any talking at the negotiations. Then the two separate groups caucus, and then the board representatives would discuss what was gonna happen. Generally, we have the superintendent and sometimes the business manager with us, depending on what we're talking about. And then again, when the two groups meet, that's just one person speaks, and there's a lot of note taking, and it's, there's a very like process oriented
Procedure.
But yeah, but yeah, I don't see any reason why you can't be there. We generally do them in executive session, so then everything that happens in there is,
Right.
And back when Bill was the superintendent, he always brought us pizza.
Past practice.
And cake, right? Pie. Pie is better than
No,
cake.
just sounds like an insurmountable boundary for me.
We were lucky to get the pizza happy.
I know, we always tried to feed the other side, and they're like, no, that's okay, we're good.
Yeah.
I don't know what they thought we were putting in that.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Seeing and hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Sometimes it's enjoyable.
All right. Good. Hope so.
Me too.
All right, so.
Especially with the
JAMBA,
pizza.
Yeah, right. We already moved up JAMBA, so letter regarding collaborative budgeting.
So yeah, I would just place this on the agenda in case you guys wanted to have a conversation about this. Maybe you want to wait and get more depth when we get to the more closer to budgeting. But I think it's a good read because it kind of lays out all the different drivers to be thinking about and some of the challenges. So if you're new, particularly if you're new to it, to have some context for where we're at within the state, it has some good context there. And of course, as I said, the governor sent out a follow-up letter as well. So I think those are the things we don't need to spend a lot of time discussing unless you want to, but it's just good to have that context. The one thing I will add, the only thing I'll say is part of the conversations I had with the AOE and DEC about the PCB testing was the emphasis that they had when we were talking about, because I was explaining to them, well, the district is trying to do what we think the state wants us to do anyways. Like, this is it's advantageous for us, but isn't this what the state's been talking about? And they definitely were very pleased that we were ahead of the curve in thinking about this and talking about this. And they talked about the idea that if districts have facility plans in place, either at the school level, the district level, the SU level, or even the multi-SU level, that the scale to which you have been thinking about your facilities long-term will be, and actually reminds me of one thing we need to talk about.
Me too.
The further along you are on that road and the broader the scope of the conversation, the higher you will be on the list of whatever the list looks like from the construction aid process when and if they get to that. So there's a lot of different elements that'll be in that rubric to see where schools or districts get placed to receive money. But having been thinking and planning about it is one of those factors that we were sure would be part of it. The condition of your buildings, the PCB levels, all of those things are going to be part of it. But having a full scale, like thoughtful conversation. So I just want to put that out there, which leads me into the thing we forgot to talk about with the slideshow, which was, do we want to have a slide at some point that talks about the idea that this is specifically a short to medium plan. This is not the end game of long-term planning. We don't want people to think that we've solved it and move on, that there still is something centralized, whatever the board wants to do to talk about, and to have something in there that represents that element of, maybe it's something that takes action at that October meeting as well, that there's something that happens. So I've been hammering you guys a little bit on this, thinking about the longer term, and I just didn't know whether or not you want that presentation to the community to reflect that this is sort of step one, if you will, of a multi-step process. And how do you want to phrase that? What do you want it to look like? I should have mentioned that earlier, I forgot all about it.
I think you could just make that an easy visual, right? Just show the
stairs,
show the buildings, and right, sure. And then step one, the 2 buildings, and then step 3, question mark.
Yeah. So I think, if I'm a community member, I'm going to ask that question. Well, is this permanent? Like you're talking about, rolling in these temporary structures. What's the long-term plan? So just having some idea, maybe having an answer to that, or a thought about that would be good.
Mm-hmm.
So especially as it ties into what we were told from the
Yep. Yes.
Along those lines, I think that it doesn't necessarily need to be a conversation that we have tonight, but I think that we as a board need to decide how that longer term plan should come about, whether that is a committee thing or a whole board thing or something that we already kind of know the answer to, we just haven't talked about, or something completely different from any of those. But I think that when we do make a decision about our short term, we can't let that be the end all. We obviously have so much more work to do, and I think it's only fair to at least have an idea of how we're going to get there.
Agreed. Yeah. Keep the momentum. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. Was that it on the? Yeah. I'm sure more to follow on that.
Can I ask one more back to the long-term planning?
Yeah.
It occurred to me, how are we making sure the public is clear on when these 3 sessions are? I know some schools have been advertising it, but also the content of the meetings and why they should come.
Yeah, so we had a brief statement that was sent out, I think by all the schools, the 2 elementary stuff like that, right? I think, Dana, did you do that as well, a little statement? No?
Yeah, it went out.
You did, okay. So they're definitely getting it out there, but that only goes to families, right? So we have to figure out how to get the social media presence going. They've been warned, so they're legally been put out there for people to see. But I think if board members in particular want to take those warnings and push them out to front porch forums and your personal Facebooks and things and encourage people to come, I think that's going to be big. We got Chris Mays is in the room here, so I'm sure will mention it in his story, right, Chris? All right, we'll give him a pizza if he does. And he's gonna hold me to that.
There we go.
See?
He wants listening. Pepperoni.
Good, likes pepperoni. I'll take care of you, Chris. So yeah, but those dates are on here, the locations, the times, they will be Zoom. Actually, so yeah, we'll do another round of communication reminders. And I think the thing to emphasize too is that if you can't make the one in your town, the local one, you can go to any of them. The people that doesn't
Or all of them.
Or all of them. You don't have to be just go to the one that's located near you. You can go to any of them. We recognize that there'll be people that can't do certain dates and times. So yeah, I think publicizing that is going to be really important.
So when we all, sorry, just to be clear, definitely all gets out. So we're all individually share wherever possible. And what else? Is there anything else we can be doing as far? I mean, I feel like it's a.
Well, I mean, we could,
Yeah,
if the board wants to, we could get a little like advertising box in the Reformer and do a little notice of them, sort of more formal, paid advertisement.
I mean, we're already gonna be front page, top of the fold. I mean,
Careful
that's
what you
what
wish
pizza
for.
gets you these days, right?
No thumbs up on that one, good.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think that's important how we get the word out so people are aware. And I know some of the towns like have also sent the stuff out as well. And after the story before, there's been a lot of traffic at the town halls. I've talked to a couple of different town clerks who've mentioned that to me, so.
Could we request to all of the local select boards to send it out to whatever mailing list they have?
That's true, yep.
Would it be feasible to do like a postcard mailing to every resident? I know it's not a huge population, but there are people who are, like, most of this is computer-based.
Those get really expensive.
Yeah.
Even bulk mailing gets really expensive.
And I was thinking the turnaround time of designing something as well might be tight. But
I feel like Front Porch Forum is probably the best local advertisement. And Karen.
And Karen.
We just need to make sure somebody on the board is gonna do that. If we, I think there's only 2 Front Porch Forums that need to have it put on, right? Because the Newfane Brookline one is Townsend too. Newfane, Brookline, and Townsend are all am I right, on one Front Porch Forum? And Jamaica's another one?
Yes.
Is anybody connected to that is willing and able? Who's our,
It's just if we're gonna do it, we should make sure that it's done in both, all the communities.
Yeah, I'll get it up to the town offices to have them use their email list.
Give me the note,
create a text.
give me the text you wanna see on it, I'll throw it on the Townsend one.
It might just be the dates and times and just a brief statement about what it is.
Do we have one that we've released already so that it can just?
Yeah, the families had one. I can throw it your way.
Yeah, send it my way, I'll put it on.
Actually, I'll send it to everybody.
Okay.
It was like 2 sentences. It wasn't very long, right?
Yeah, that's all, I just wanna be consistent. Sure. And not editorialize at all.
Perfect.
Right, I'll get that out to you guys tomorrow. Okay.
Great.
And BCTV will also be covering, they might be doing it from Zoom on one of them if they had some trouble with staffing all 3 of them, but they'll definitely be covering it for us as well. And then the last I view is the next meeting, we mentioned the 14th in my slideshow, but it's actually not the 14th technically, because that's Indigenous Peoples Day. So Al wanted to talk about
7th or
dates.
21st. Do we want to have it closer to our meetings with the towns? 7th?
That is what I would say.
We'd kind of be fresh off of those. That makes sense. Anybody disagree?
Tell me again.
October 7th?
7?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll change the slide, the timeline slide as well to reflect that.
All right, perfect. And then we also have the WCSU Full Board Retreat on October 23rd.
Yep, and that's going to be at the Marlboro School. It will be catered again for dinner by Jake. over at Marlboro, but they'll be in their back, what they call the Outback, which is a building out back. It's a gym. It's not technically in Australia, but it is up behind their building. So if you want to come to that, we'll send out a little RSVP for food count and stuff, but hopefully the SU members will minimally be there. And Peter, did you get the email from the RAB meetings?
Yes,
You
I did. And I was now on my mailing list.
It didn't list a time though. So I don't know if you know that, but it's 11:30 start. They have food if you go in person. And it would be probably 90 minutes-ish.
Okay.
So he's a new, you appointed him to the Regional Advisory Board for the Career Center. So he's going to be starting that. And that is
Great. We have the executive session.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Does anybody have the language?
Yeah, I was gonna say. do we
I'll
have-
just take it over. How do I go when I'm done? I'll check your email.
I trust you.
I'll send a strongly worded message to your entire staff.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
That's a good idea.
Executive session.
This is Scott.
Discuss a contractual
Start with that. They always
matter. I don't know the
do
VSA. It's just premature knowledge of the contract would be detrimental to the board.
Yeah.
I don't have the actual VSA.
VSA -60.38.
It's,
You probably just pull it.
Oh, wait.
Last.
I do have it.
Yes, you do.
Oh, look at that, look at that.
The cheat sheet.
The VSBA cheat sheet.
Oh, that's good.
1 VSA section 313A1. I move to find that premature general public knowledge regarding the contract clearly places the board at a substantial disadvantage because the board risks disclosing its negotiation strategy if it discusses the contract in public. That's the first motion.
I'll second it.
The second motion is I move to enter executive session. Oh, would we have to
Yeah,
vote on that?
yeah.
Sorry.
All those in favor
I
say
got so
aye.
excited.
Aye.
The second motion is I move to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing the co-curricular contract under Title I, Section 313A1.
Okay, before we, sorry, I did not say that we approved, sorry. On the first motion,
Oh, I'm sorry.
unanimous, motion passes. And, sorry, go ahead, second. You already said it, but
I second it.
thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, the motion passes and we are now going into executive session. All right, we're out of executive session. And do we have a motion?
Yes, I would make a motion to approve the memoranda of agreement between the West River Modified Union Education District regarding co-curricular activities as presented, with Exhibit A listing the positions and salaries to be added as long as, at a later date, as long as it fits within the budget parameters.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, folks, and I'll entertain that final motion.
A motion.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
We'll see you in about 10 days.
Motion.
Yeah.